2, 1. Hey everybody, welcome to Somewhere in the Middle, where we talk about all things life and all things money with the hopes of finding the truth somewhere, honestly, in the middle. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Thomas, the founder of Modem Solutions. If you haven't already, definitely check us out on Instagram, hashtag Modem Solutions, and like, share, subscribe here on YouTube. On today's show, we are going to explore, I think, a very big topic, which is real estate investing, especially if you want to have tenants and do all that good stuff. But I want to explore this conversation from a slightly different perspective. I don't want to explore it from the end game, where you have people who've done this for decades, and now they're incredibly successful, and they're telling you all of their wealth secrets as it relates to real estate investing. I want to start this conversation from the beginning, where you received information from these gurus basically, and you're just getting started out, and what that process looks like when you're in the beginning phases of something, and you're trying to strive to be as successful as those other people are. So to help guide this conversation along, I've invited a dear friend of mine and a very special guest, Jerome Singleton. Jerome, welcome to Somewhere in the Middle. How are you, bruh?
I'm doing good. It's great to be here. I'm excited.
All right. I'm glad that you're here. So you and I, we go way back, honestly, literally in so many different ways. I actually served as the director of admissions at a small liberal arts college in Southeast Georgia. And well, literally, no, more like Southwest Georgia, but in the Southeast. And Jerome, you decided to attend that institution at that time, and we actually connected, had a relationship. I wouldn't necessarily say a mentor-mentee type thing. I don't know what you would call it, but I definitely connected with you and your passion. You were always very disciplined, always very humbled, and you just stayed on top of things as a student coming in as a freshman. And I always knew, since the first time that I met you, that you would achieve extraordinary levels of success. So if you will, tell us a little about, how did you perceive that relationship that you and I had when you came to the college that you had attended initially?
All right. Well, my first impression was like, wow, we're playing a lot of phone tag and going back and forth between emails. So I'm a senior in high school. I just graduated. I decided to attend LaGrange College in LaGrange, Georgia. And I'm looking people up and I see Dr. Thomas. So I reach out to you. We're supposed to have a phone call. You call, I miss it. I call you back, you miss it, etc. So I figure, okay, it's the first day orientation. I'll just see him down there. And so I walk into one of the buildings. I look to my left, and I don't know why this astonished me, but you look exactly like you do in person. You look the same way in your picture. Oh, that's Mr. Thomas. Oh, perfect. He's Mr. Thomas at the point. He isn't Dr. Thomas yet. So I walk in there. I'm like, hey, you must be Mr. Thomas. Like, I am. I'm like, hey, I'm Jerome Singleton. He's like, oh yeah, we've been exchanging emails and playing phone tag. Like, oh, you remember me? I'm sorry, I'm 18 years old at this point. And I'm like, you remember me? I'm like, pretty sure there's a lot of students here. I'm like, oh, that's good. And so from that one, always based on that first conversation and us playing phone tag and finishing our conversation for emails, I always felt as though you were some person I could come and talk to, which I did even when I was at LaGrange College. And even when I transitioned to West Georgia and transitioned into my career, which is why I always keep in touch. I still text you, email you, call, and I really appreciate you always answering back. Like, that's why I figure like, oh, I'm about to leave LaGrange College, your alma mater, and then you're not gonna talk anymore. Like, oh, Jerome, nah, you left, bro. You a traitor. You gonna go ahead and put everybody in the spam.
No, I would never do that. And again, you know, the reason why I did the work that I did at LaGrange College was literally to just kind of help people find their way, and literally and honestly to inform people and let them know that, you know, they're not stuck. And you made a pivotal decision for yourself at that time to make a transition, which is actually, if you want to talk about it, a very difficult thing to do for a college student, because there are these other fears that are involved in how people are going to perceive you and whether or not I'm making the right choice. But at the end of the day, that's grown up type stuff, honestly. And change isn't inherently bad. Change is just a choice. What comes of it, you can actually dictate and decide where things go from there. As long as you're being honest, true to yourself, and being objective about the choice that you're making, then I'm cool with it. And I really thought that you were in that place when you made that transition. So that was pretty cool to actually hear a little bit of that backstory and how that connection came about. So, question for you: you are currently engaging in real estate and things of that nature. You bought your first rental property recently, and I definitely want to get into all that conversation about that stuff. But before we do, I want to know a little bit more about what you're currently doing. Let me know about your background, what your passions are, and then ultimately we'll see how that ties into what you're currently doing now.
All right, so for me, I'm Jerome Singleton. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. It's also referred to as Negro country or the Gullah Geechee culture. It's on the
Mhm.
eastern coast of the United States of America. I've lived in the state of Georgia since I was about 5 years old, so most of my roots are in the state of Georgia. As we just spoke about, I started my college career at LaGrange College. After my freshman year, I elected to transfer to the University of West Georgia, where I graduated summa cum laude.
Air
I
high
went on
five.
high five on that one.
Boom.
Like, that's a win on that one. And so even from there, I go on to become an accounts payable generalist in corporate America. After about 90 days, I get approached and say, hey, you're doing phenomenal. We want to make you an accountant. And from there, I am juggling being an accountant, going to graduate school at Clayton State University to get my accounting MBA and also obtain my CPA license. So I was able to do all that with my first employer. Then after that point, I actually transitioned to my current employer where I'm working as a senior corporate accountant as well as doing some controllership work. And that's been a phenomenal experience as well. All right, so that's my professional mask and whatnot, just for everybody to know. Okay, I'm done with that. All right, that's my professional mask. Okay, so who am I really? Let's get to these childhood passions. We talked about it before, Dr. Thomas. We're going all the way
Let's just go in. Let's go in.
left. So my childhood passions, I was very passionate about politics even as a youth. I love Stokely Carmichael. I love Muhammad Ali. Ever since I saw that movie Ali with Will Smith,
Yeah.
definitely that really what got me started on that track. And it always just fascinated me that a bunch of ordinary people said, we don't like how the world is set up. And so what we're going to do, we're going to try to change it. And that was something that really inspired me when I looked at Dr. Angela Davis as well, or even Ella Baker who was SNCC. And if you don't know who these individuals are, you can definitely look them up to your viewers. Like, they're phenomenal people that I feel like get glossed over at times. So
Yes.
politics,
Bro,
football,
I'm feeling this energy, man. Speak to him.
oh,
Speak
definitely.
to
We're
him,
gonna
bro.
have some real conversation. And like, well, anybody, if I can do it, you can do it. No, we're gonna talk about everything, like the good, the bad, the ugly, the inspirations, the perseverance. And so when we look at passion for my youth, also football, it's the deep south. It's a football country. I always remember playing Madden as a child. That was one of my favorite games. I don't know if some of your viewers know who Barry Sanders is, probably one of the greatest running backs ever to come through the NFL with the Detroit Lions. I actually remember the play that made me want to actually play football. One, I'm a very small person, but he's also a small person. And so I remember some play, he was veering to the left. Somebody tried to make a shoestring tackle. He actually jumps out of one of his shoes, cuts back to the right, and he takes off down the sideline. And I'm like 6 or 7 years old, and I'm just going crazy. Not because he didn't even score on the play, he got pushed out of bounds at like the 10-yard line. But as
Yeah.
a kid, it's really cool to see somebody running around in their socks because I do that all the time when I was a kid.
You was
So
relatable.
definitely politics, video games, any game you can name from probably that 90s era when like Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Banjo Kazooie, Donkey Kong, Super Mario, Legend of Zelda. I say Pyro so many times. I'm so infatuated with that game, with Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Majora's Mask, Link to the Past. Like, seriously, if I see Ganondorf right now and he's like the villain in The Legend of Zelda, like, it's pretty much on site. It's like, you ain't learned your lesson? Like, oh, we going back to it. So that's one of my favorite video games. Also with the Grand Theft Auto series, San Andreas and Vice City. And this is pretty much set the roots for me getting into real estate. I didn't know this now as a child. But as an adult, I can link it back. So in Vice City, there's a character and he's doing a bunch of missions and he makes money for doing missions. It'd be the equivalent of earned income because he has a boss that he reports to, even though they're involved in criminal activity, so to speak. He has bosses that he reports to. He performs these assignments. He generates income and whatnot. But also during the game, once he generates enough income, and you'll see the parallel between what I'm doing now as a CPA and also real estate on the side. On the side, he actually takes that money, he saves it, or in the game, you can save the money and you can buy your own nightclub. You can buy your own ice cream shop. You can buy your own taxi club. I
Interesting.
mean, you don't even have to do anything. You actually purchase these businesses, you have employees beneath you. And so every now and then I'll do a couple of missions and then I'll go there after 3, 4, 5 missions, go back and I can just pick the money up and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, people really live like this. And
All right.
then
Hold on one second. So At a young age. So with Grand Theft Auto is what we're talking about right now, right?
Yes.
You have the option to go buy real estate if you choose to
Yeah.
receive a passive income stream. Passive income stream.
Yeah.
So you had the wherewithal within this game, and actually got a dopamine hit, and realized that, oh, I can go make money the hard way, but then reinvest this money in real estate, and I just show up like clockwork every couple of weeks or so, and I'm going to get paid for work that I didn't really have to work as hard for. And
Exactly. And
that excited you.
exactly, because I'm doing these missions, and these missions are hard, and it's a hard way to make, in this case, $4,000 or $5,000 or whatever it was per mission. Is different levels. But then I'm over here doing passive income by buying different businesses, buying different real estate in the video game, and I'm making the same money over here, and I'm not putting in half as much effort. And I'm still being able to take that money and then flip it and buy more real estate. And so I'm literally just driving around in the game buying real estate
Oh,
business, real estate business.
so I have a question for you. Did you get to a point in this game where you were able to retire yourself from doing the other stuff and just live off of the income that you were generating from your properties?
Yes, and that's pretty much the point of the game, because after some point in time, you actually run out of missions to do. Like, it's just all the jobs have been completed. And so if I've wasted that, yeah, go ahead.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So literally, there is a defined timeline. And all of this kind of goes to this conversation about financial
Hmm.
literacy. And at the time that we're recording this, it's Financial Literacy Month. So you have a timeline in which literally you could earn the money from these other side work, all this other side work you're doing. There's some risk with that, obviously. Um, you could take that money, you could spend it, you can blow it on things or whatever it may be, right?
Exactly.
And not be thinking about this timeline that's kind of ticking away where you literally run out of jobs, right? And then you don't have anything to support yourself because you hadn't really built up or done anything. And then literally, if you haven't done anything by that point, if we think about this in real life, it's almost like you're stuck in the underworld, right? You got to go find somebody else to do the dirty work for.
Exactly, and that's how the game is set up. And so, and notice he actually starts off as a work, and slowly he transitions into actual boss role, and then from there he starts making investments in these different properties, which is amazing within itself. And so that's really good about the game, and that's what it kind of programmed my mind to do at that point in time. And the same when I got to San Andreas, it's also a section of the game where I can buy a nightclub, or I could buy a garage. But if I'd actually, and I never did this in the game, complete all the missions, spent all the money on cars, clothes, guns, because that's what San Andreas and Vice City is about, really shooting guns and whatnot. Then in the game, that's it. It's like there's no more missions to generate. I don't have any real estate, any passive income, so it's pretty much an L. Like, I've beaten the game, but I haven't beaten the game, so to speak. So that really set the tempo for me actually getting into passive income later on in life.
Interesting. This is just fascinating me. This is fascinating to me because it makes me wonder if if there was data being collected during that time on the video game, like if you could actually collect data in a video game, and then to look at kids at that point in time who played the game, and you have like different factions of these kids, right? Those who did what you did in terms of secured their well-being off into the future with every dollar that they were earning currently through real estate and whatever it may be. And then others who just bought cars, jewelry, guns, and stuff like that, and just kind of went with the process. And then how has that actually played out today in terms of this video game and the way that they interpreted the game and the values that they sought in the game? How does that affect the way that they engage with money today? I think that's an incredibly powerful stream of thought. And would you say with your peers, Jerome, that others viewed and played the video game the way that you did in terms of thinking about passive streams of income? And like you just took this real world mentality at a young age and applied it to a video game. Do your other peers talk about, yeah, I got all my real estate, I'm good, I don't have to work for anybody anymore?
Unfortunately, they don't, and that's where I've always been on the fence about video games. So you remember back in the 90s, 2000s, and even right now in 2021, the video games, they're violent. There's a lot of bad things that happen in Grand Theft Auto, which is why
Yeah.
parents are encouraged not to let their child play. And I understand that portion of it as well. And that's what I always thought about as a child. actually playing these video games, because I'm like, what are we actually getting from the video games? Some people are getting, okay, you can buy guns, you can do drive-by shootings, and so that's why they're playing the video game. But I'm actually doing the video game and learning like I've always learned, because education, that's also been a passion of mine. And my favorite subject growing up was math. So I would actually be playing these video games. I'm doing these missions. How many missions do I have to do with $5,000 so I can buy that property for $100,000? And so this was my experience coming through the game. So unfortunately, I can't actually testify for what my peer, because some of them, they just play Grand Theft Auto. They're on like Grand Theft Auto 7 now. And man, we can shoot anything on this game. We can do what we want. And so I'm like, yeah. So it's always interesting what we got from games. And these games, I speak so much about them. I speak so highly of all of them. Grand Theft Auto, Legend of Zelda, Super Mario. They develop that critical thinking. Any intelligence that I display in my adulthood, it's come from this game. If you ever played Legend of Zelda, Super Mario,
Yes.
these are very concrete games. Like I played the original Super Mario that came out on Nintendo way back when, or Super Nintendo way back when. That game is difficult. Like even finding out there's a hidden passage in both of the ghost worlds where you can go through one exit or a second exit, and then you can hit the red button, and now all the red boxes are highlighted through all the stages. These are very complex games. So to actually go through them, and my amazing experience with video games is I would literally try to find everything within a video game. And that's really how I approach learning now when I was in college or graduate school, even now as an adult. I try to learn everything as much as I can, because the more I learn, the more I know, the better I can navigate through these video games. And I take that into life as well. So that's
Love
why video games, like that's ingrained in there.
So I got to ask a question. So there's the argument nature versus nurture. So tell us a little. So in context of this video game theme, and at a very young age, just obviously having a very mature mind and thinking differently about the world, and actually thinking about what value am I getting out of playing this game. I'll be honest with you. When I was playing Mario growing up, I wasn't thinking about the value I was getting out of it. Zelda, I always thought that Zelda was hard because you had to solve like these puzzles literally within a game. But it was always really rewarding when you figured the puzzle out. Like you would get dopamine hit, like I got it. Now I'm moving on to the next level. So tell me about your household environment. Was that something that was nurtured in terms of what was the culture of your household around money, around education, and all these different things?
All right, so really when it comes to money, like always with my parents, they always emphasize being a saver instead of a spender. So maybe I had an allowance for me and brothers. We had allowance of like $5 a week, which to a kid at that point, that's a lot of money. Like, man, buy everything from the store, but I get my $5, I go spend it on candy. Then I'm like, well, I have no money until next week. And so when it comes to the allowance, I also noticed, and this is back to video games. So there's a game called Mario Tennis. I really wanted to buy that game on N64, but it cost $64.99. I remember exactly. I'll get a $5 allowance. That's not hard math. I'm like, all right, so if it's about $65, I didn't understand taxes, but it was $65. I divide that by 5. That's 13 weeks. So if I save my allowance for 13 weeks, I go purchase Mario Tennis, which I did, and I still have that video game and whatnot. So that really.
Hold on, pause that thought. You made up in your mind. How old were you again?
At this point, I'm in elementary school, so I'm probably 9, maybe 10 years old. This third, fourth grade.
So you basically used math.
My favorite subject.
To think about how much time to achieve a goal, and then you deferred gratification for 13 weeks as a 9 or 10-year-old to get the thing that you wanted. Jerome, is that normal?
Normal for me, and I thought that now apparently not, but me, I thought it was just normal. I'm like, if you want something, you have a stream of income. And I could tell a story later about even being in middle school. It's a similar situation. I wanted a PlayStation 2. It was $140, but I actually didn't have money or a job. I'm about 14 years old at this time. I still have my PS2 as why, because it actually serves as a symbol of this actual occurrence in my life. So I was walking through the grocery store, my mother, she's buying groceries, and then I saw Airheads. They're like candy. And so you get 90 Airheads for like I think $10 or whatnot. And then I actually did math. I'm like, well, what is that? They're like 9 cents an Airhead. I can go to school and sell these for like 25 cents each. And I can do literally, Tom, with quarters. My mom, she bought Airheads for me. I went to school, sold them. Every week I was going back and just buying 90 more boxes of Airheads. And I literally, quarter by quarter, because it's 9 cents, and I'm literally, I think actually the cost was about 10 or 11 cents. They actually broke it down for me on a box, so I didn't have to do the math. Like, your money, your business. And so it was actually 11 cents an Airhead. I sold them for a quarter each. So I'm covering my costs. I'm literally like, that's like 200% profit or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually taking the Airheads to school, selling them, and I was able to save up over $150 in like a month or two and buy the PlayStation 2. And after that, I actually started diversifying. I actually started buying hot Cheetos as well. Once again, from Sam Club, this is all true. I was buying hot Cheetos. Like, this is where all the entrepreneurship comes from. I didn't recognize it as a child, but as a adult, I recognized literally buying hot Cheetos and selling Airheads. And I actually had an employee as well, one of my good friends, Rico. And so he like, man, you selling all that stuff, but there's people in other classes that you can't get to because I only sold them in my class and on the bus. And he like, well, if you give me like $5 a week, I'll sell them for you. And that's what I'm doing. So,
are you serious?
yeah, Rico selling, I'm selling. I had another friend named Stanley. Mind you, the middle school, 13, 14 years old. We're living in Smyrna, Georgia. I cannot make this up. This is where all the entrepreneurship and hustle came from. And so Stanley, like, man, I can sell for you too, because it's another class that you and Rico aren't in that I can sell for as well. And from there, we were actually just selling Airheads, hot Cheetos. I'm paying you to do like $500 a week once again in middle school back in the 2000s. And I'm actually making really good money at that time, especially for a 13, 14-year-old. And so that's actually, so that's where actually my relationship with money is like, man, if you take money and you put it into something that's going to build you money, build wealth later, you're going to be good. But once again, I'm a child. I don't fully understand what I'm doing.
Yes.
I just know I want that Mario Tennis and that PlayStation. This made mathematical sense. We go back to my passion, math, education. In my head, the numbers make sense, which is the same when we get into real estate later. If the numbers make sense, I'm going to do it. And
so you were empire before empire, literally. Let's just be real. You were empire before empire. So this is Jerome. I love this so much.
Man.
Because your parents allowed for you to engage with money early on in life and to actually think through how you could get something that you wanted to get, and I would say more than likely encourage and nudge you to do the thing. But they allowed for you to have that space to actually get over the hump, right? So you're like, when I teach my personal finance class at the University of Georgia, I tell my college students that yes, saving for your financial goals can feel like an uphill battle, right? But when you get over the top, it is sexy as hell. Like literally, it is sexy as hell because you do all this work and then you get a chance to experience the purchased home. Like you do all this work, then you get to retire or retire early. You do all this work, then you get to take the vacation. And you're like, oh my goodness, like this is what it was all for. But what happens for a lot of people is that they start working up the hill, and then something happens and they roll back down. They start working up the hill, something happens, they roll back down. So what happens is this hill starts to become a negative thing, and they never experience the joy and the dopamine hit that you get when you actually achieve the thing. Because once you achieve it, right, it's just like sledding, all right? For anybody who's ever sledded, you have to go up the hill, right? Once you get up, you sled down, and it's such a rush that you don't care how big that hill is. You want to get up that hill again so you can get that rush of getting back down again, right? So you experience that early, and that dopamine hit that comes with finishing. And that tells me a lot about you and your character, because I always considered you to be a finisher. And not only did you finish things, you always finished stuff early and got stuff done ahead of time. You never really wasted time.
Yes, because me, I didn't want to prolong the suffering. And to what you said about going up the hill, falling back down, and then having to go back up the hill again, that happened even with that story. Because before I was selling Airheads and hot Cheetos, I was selling Jolly Ranchers and bubblegum. And the bubblegum wasn't that good. It kind of tasteless. It's like the cheap bubblegum comes like, it's probably like 200 pieces in a bucket. It would actually get sticky in my pockets and stuff. And kids didn't want that.
It was a good product.
Like, we don't want the bubble gum. And then the Jolly Ranchers, they were good, but they would actually, because they're more of a solid type of candy, they would actually break in my pocket as well.
Interesting.
And so they said, you know what, I'm gonna switch you to Airheads, because if you look at Airheads, they're very long in cylinder and they're meant to actually bend and they'll give a little bit. And so those actually won't get damaged in my pocket and whatnot. So that's going up and going down. And then back to what you were just saying, with the situation. Like, all right, so I always try to finish stuff early. It's because I didn't want to prolong the suffering. Like when I'm saving for that PS2, I'm like 14 years old, like $100. Like literally me, I have it. I don't even have a bank account. I don't have a shoebox. Why would I have a shoebox? I'm not a dope boy, but I don't have a shoebox. I literally have, when you go to the bank, you actually get like deposit slips and they give you like that little blue, it's like a blue kind of, it's not a blue container. It's like a blue wallet, but it has plastic on the inside, and it's really used for checks where you can actually use it and rip the check off, and you put another check up so you can actually do a placeholder. I'm putting money in there because I just don't have a wallet. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm at $100. I can go buy some shoes. Air Force Ones are popular. Tall tees are popular. What else? Throwback jerseys are popular. But I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna buy this. I'm gonna buy the PlayStation 2. And that level of suffering and sacrifice, it's hard to maintain that over a long period of time. So that's why I try to get it done early, because once I actually got my PlayStation 2, there's nothing else I really want to buy. So I'm just still selling this stuff, running my quote unquote empire, as you said, and I'm just accumulating the money, which is good. I'm still saving it because that's just what I was taught to do at that point. Because I'm like, this one ends soon. But yeah, that's why individuals, and me in particular, I try to get it done early, because once it's over, it's over.
Gotcha.
I don't have to deal with it anymore. It's like, oh, thank you, my sacrifice, I paid the toll. Let's keep it moving. Like, yes.
You also just teased out another important thing here, is that you got the thing, PlayStation, get the dopamine hit, but yet you continued to sell candy and things of that nature to continue to make money and to save money. Now, a lot of people, once they've experienced the goal, they take their foot off the gas, they slow down, they get comfortable. You did not slow down. You didn't get comfortable. And even at your age, you still saw the value to kind of continue. So again, this nature versus nurture argument, was this a nudge from your parents, or is this just a part of your DNA?
That portion was just a part of DNA, because once I got the actual item, at that point, I'm just accumulating wealth because something triggered in my head. It's something about me that I've always been a long-term thinker. I wouldn't say call myself a visionary or whatnot, but I always try to be 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 steps ahead of myself. And go back to another passion that I really get into, which is hip hop. And I'm listening to these different artists such as Tip Harris or Tupac or Biggie Smalls, Jay-Z, Nas. Yes.
Tupac, that's my guy.
Definitely. It fascinated me because a lot of these individuals, maybe not with Tupac Shakur, but you look at Nas and Jay-Z and Tip Harris, they didn't even finish high school. I'm like, how did these individuals, or even if we take to the West Coast and look at NWA, Snoop Dogg, I'm like, a lot of these individuals did not even finish high school or barely got out of high school, and yet they went on to become millionaires. And Jay-Z, he's actually a billionaire right now. And it's always something that fascinates me. Like, they must know something that I don't know. It's somebody that was always the A student. And when I actually listened to the music, it was always them thinking outside the box, always them thinking steps ahead. So me selling these Airheads and Hot Cheetos and have my friends selling for me, I'm thinking, okay, eventually I'm going to have to transition to high school, and I don't think people are going to want Airheads and Hot Cheetos for a quarter for the rest of their life. Like, eventually individuals are going to want something else. So let me make all the money I can now.
Change.
Exactly. And save it, especially go to Campbell High School. Like, there's a lot of individuals that sell like other products I'm not going to get into on the show. So like, yeah, they're going to want those a lot more. I'm not trying to get anybody indicted or whatnot.
Well, let's just be honest.
High school in the early 2000s.
Jerome, let's just be honest, because I come from a similar background.
Yes.
Airheads or weed, like which one?
Exactly.
Right? And especially at that time frame, once we got into high school and things of that nature, things change pretty significantly as relates to that. So I want to kind of come back to something here. This whole notion of being a long-term thinker. You said that I don't necessarily consider myself to be a visionary, but definitely a long-term thinker. Would you say that comes from? I'm trying to tease out. I guess I'm trying to tease out something here, because usually when we think about children, especially at the ages in which you're talking about, children typically tend to be more myopic in nature, just kind of thinking about the present, not farsighted but not thinking about the future so much in terms of where can this potentially go at some point. What is that process of where does that come? I'm still trying to get, like, where is this coming from?
Yeah, the long-term thinking?
Yes.
Legend of Zelda, that's where it comes from. Because Legend of Zelda, when you look at the structure of games like Grand Theft Auto, you have set missions. You go on this mission, complete it. Or when you think of Super Mario, remember you complete this level, then that level, then the next level, then the next level, then the next level, and so on and so forth. There's a set path for you. Like you have to think to get through the levels, but you actually don't have to think to go forward. But when you're actually playing The Legend of Zelda, you can just run around in the game for years, months, weeks, and not actually accomplish anything. And that's why I noticed when I'm playing Zelda, and that's what's different from the game. And so when I'm playing The Legend of Zelda, I had to actually complete the Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, any Zelda game I've ever played. To actually beat that game in its entirety, I had to start thinking 2, 3 steps ahead. Like, okay, I completed one mission. I got the emerald from the forest. Okay, how do I get the emerald of fire? How do I get the emerald of water? Okay, now we're going to the Temple of Time, and now we're on to the next stage. Link, he's now a grown man, and I have to get like 6 medallions. Okay, let me get the forest one. Okay, what's the next one? Is it the fire? Is it the shadow? Is it the water? Is it the light temple? And how do I actually know where to go? And so that's where it got developed playing that video game. And it transitioned. Like, remember, I'm a kid this time. I don't know this consciously. I just know, okay, everything's going to come to an end. There's always the next step. There's always the next level to actually go to. It's the same way when I was in, just to fast forward a little, when I'm in corporate America and I actually had saved up enough money. And this is really cool since we're talking about sacrifices and trade-offs and whatnot. At one point in time, I'd actually saved up enough money to pay off my student loans or to fund my graduate school ambitions in cash. And I'm sitting there weighing options. It's a win-win situation. Hey, you can get free, or you could get this advanced degree that's going to put you in a perfect position to get your CPA license. Because I finished the CPA exam, but I didn't have the license because there's like a 150 credit hour requirement. First, you have to get a master's degree to become a CPA. So I'm sitting there weighing the options. So I'm like, okay, what is your trade-off? What do you want to do? Do you want to get debt free, or do you want to go and get this MBA and get this CPA license and hopefully come out and make more earnings to actually come back around and actually pay off the student loan? And so that's what Legend of Zelda Versus League teaches you. Like, you can go to this temple, but do you have all the tools necessary to go into the fire temple? No, because you didn't. At that point, I hadn't beaten the leaf temple. Okay, I want to go to water temple. You haven't beaten the leaf temple or the fire temple. How are you going to go into water temple? Because there are certain techniques and trades and skills that are in those temples that I'm going to need to be successful. And that's why you get the long-term thinking. If I want to be a CPA, what are the steps? Okay, I have to go to college and get an accounting degree.
Boom, makes sense.
CPA exam. It is just a function of the Legend of Zelda. Like, that passion drove so much, like those games, that actually developed who I was. Once again, it was subconscious. I didn't know at that point. I was just a kid playing video games, but subconscious at that point. And so that's where it really comes from. That's that long term. So the Legend of Zelda, which is my favorite game of all time. And for the record, I still have A Link to the Past. It's like a Legend of Zelda game that came out in the early 90s, late 80s. It's the first video game I ever beat. And that's the game that really taught me. It's one of the greatest Legend of Zelda games. Ocarina of Time is the greatest. Link to the Past is probably like 3 or 4 on the list all time. But Link to the Past, it really instilled that in me as a child. Like, if I want to get through this game, I have to start thinking moves ahead. Like, okay, after I beat this world, where do I go now? Because it's a very big map, and I could easily wander around. And I did this as a kid at like 6, 7 years old. I'm wandering around the game. I'm trying to get into a level, but I'm like, wait, I haven't beat the other level. And so, or the other, it's like not real level. It's a temple, like that a boss is in, and they're causing all type of mayhem. I haven't beat that area, so I can't get into this area. And so that game, after wandering around for weeks trying to figure it out, and I finally figured out, like, okay, I can't just play this like I play Super Mario. It's not that type of game. I have to think it through. I have to figure out everything I need to be able to get to these different portions. And I was, and so I beat the game. So like, yes.
What's interesting here is that it makes me want to have rights to meat meals. There's levels.
Yeah. It is
the perfect place to kind of air this right now. So again, like that whole notion of there are levels to this in meat meals, you realize that in order for me to beat one, and actually with Zelda, it's just all one big level. You just go to different temples and stuff and play. But there are levels, there is an order, and I love something that you mentioned earlier, that there are skills that you acquire along the way that give you the capacity to be successful at different levels. Because you just can't skip levels to get to where you want to be. Otherwise, you can get there, but you won't be successful because you don't have the tools necessary to execute. And I love that, because we live in a culture where we want to skip steps. We we don't want to learn the hard fought lessons that we need to learn ultimately to thrive in the places where we actually want to be. So it's incredibly important to go slow, to go fast. So what I'm hearing is you've learned these lessons playing video games, one, which I think just having a very mature mindset at a young age, and getting a skill out of this. I think Elon Musk actually alluded to this not too long ago, that he said a lot of his brilliance comes from playing video games.
Yes.
Not only that, you were also introduced to money at a young age. You had conversations with your family about saving money. They allowed for you and didn't necessarily bail you out, honestly. Like that 13-week period of saving for what you wanted to save for. It's like, oh, you only do 6 weeks, we'll do 7 for you. No, you had to save all that money on your own, so now it becomes real. So those were some good things that you talked about. Did you have any negative or you perceived as negative financial experiences where you were kind of like, I'm never doing that again as a kid?
Negative financial experiences as a kid. Whew. So really when I alluded earlier to when I started talking about selling the Airheads and Hot Cheetos before that, like the negative experience, because mind you, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know I need money to actually buy this PlayStation 2. So I buy the bubble gum, I buy the Jolly Ranchers, and my customer client base, which is a bunch of 13, 14-year-olds, even 12-year-olds, they're not actually receptive to it. And so I'm like, man, I spent my money on this and it pretty much dead stock at this point. Like this inventory is not really worth anything. I can't really sell it. So I had to cut my loss on that and see how much money I saved at that point. And then that's when I go transition and say, you know what, maybe Airheads are better. Also having competition. So I'm doing this in middle school and other kids are seeing me do this. They're like, all right, he's selling hot Cheetos and Airheads.
You're giving a business lesson, and I don't think anybody realized what you
I
were
didn't realize it.
about. And this is exactly business. If you go to business school and have business classes,
Exactly.
everything that you're talking about, barriers to entry, competition, SWOT analysis, understanding your market, products, and then exploring your product, testing your product, price points, expanding, like all of this is business. Go ahead.
Exactly. And then one of my friends, he actually started selling bubblegum. And here's the problem when we're talking about SWOT analysis. He's a threat, even though he's in a different market. Like we're in a different market, but we sell different products. Here's the price higher. So I'm like, I'm good. My stuff is cheaper. No, this person actually had more brand awareness. By that, I mean, he was actually a more popular student. So
Gotcha.
he had access to some customers, client bases, some individuals that I didn't see because I was in different classes than them and they didn't know who I was. So he's selling, then he actually was able to actually close in on me with regards to the profit that he was making. And so that's my negative financial. I'm like, once the competition entered,
Power wrapped into one. This is empire and power. I'm gonna add all this together now.
exactly. So once he started entering, I started seeing my revenue go down. I'm like, why am I not selling as much? And then it's like, okay, there's this individual, et cetera, who also selling a good friend of mine. And then also we have somebody who was selling candy, like, because there are numerous people starting to enter in at this point. They may not know what they're doing, but one individual actually started giving his product away because some kids, they can be easily manipulated and say, hey, come on, I'll pay you later, and then he give them the candy and they wouldn't pay him. So like, why go to Jerome and get it when we get it for free from this
Got
individual?
you.
So
Got you.
that
So
was
they were
like that.
finessing him.
Yeah, we talk about bad money experiences as a kid. That was it right there. Like that one, like that whole scenario was it. Like I still came out well. Like I said, I was able to get PS2, embrace the competition, learned that I had to expand into other forms like the hot Cheetos. But regards to that, I was like, man, this is competition. Like when the competition entered, it became less fun. It's better to have a monopoly. So I understand individuals that don't want that competition. So
Absolutely.
other than that, being a kid, I've had experiences where I've actually, like when we go back to the $5 lounge buying Mario Tennis, I got a lot of joy and satisfaction for that game. So I'm saving. So I started buying other games too. And some of those games were worth the money. Some of those games, I'm not trying to get anybody sued, but Rugrats, I don't know. Rugrats Fight Back or something. I spent $20 that game. I beat that whole game in like 7 hours. And I'm like,
Okay.
I want my money back. This is not what I actually signed up for. I thought it'd be a lot of fun playing with Chucky and everybody and Tommy, but I'm like, this was fun.
It wasn't it.
Yeah, that buyer's remorse hits sometimes. Like I spent all my money on this. You know what?
But the thing, though, is that you learn these lessons at a young age.
Yes.
So I would imagine from your line of thought, before you made other purchases, did you start to begin to do more due diligence in terms of, do I really want this? Is this really going to make me happy or provide me some type of contentment? Was that a part of your process moving forward?
Absolutely. And I still do that now. Like sometimes I'll see something, we're all on social media, so we understand, man. It'd be something like somebody be selling a kangaroo, and it's like, oh my gosh, kangaroo jack. I can't wait.
Where you get that at?
Where you gonna put the kangaroo at? Like, let's be
I want a kangaroo.
exactly. It's a lot of things that we see on social media that we never thought we wanted, but because they're running analytics, they'll show it and make it seem like we want this actual product and whatnot. And when I see that, my impulse kicks in. So just to answer the question, I'm rarely an impulse buyer because of my experiences when I'm younger. So my impulse is, man, I should go buy that kangaroo, that cheetah. Okay, buy some more running shoes. You know, I just bought some running shoes that work perfectly. And so I'm not spending excessive amounts of money. I'm like, Jerome, do you really want this, or did you just see it and it really look cool? It's the same way like me. I still have an Android phone. I'm going to tell this embarrassing story to your viewers. I have an Android phone right now. I've had it since literally, we're in 2021 for anybody that's watching this in 2030. I hope it stays up that long. So we're in 2021. I got this Android phone in 2014.
Wow.
I kid you not. My contract had expired with my cell phone service provider. And so I got the phone in 2014, and it texts, it lets me get on the internet, it lets me make phone calls. I think my battery usage life, it'll probably last uncharged maybe like 6 hours, and it's supposed to be like 3 days. Like that's how old the phone is. I can't even get most apps. Like I can't get Cash App. I can't get Zelle app, any app you name, WhatsApp app. What are these other Clubhouse? I cannot download. It's not compatible with what's actually in the phone and like the operating system. And so I still have that phone, even though I'm bombarded by images and my contract is expired because it's only 2 years. So I'm pretty much on like my fourth. It's really month by month, but I would have been on my fourth cycle, like for opportunity to get a new cell phone. I haven't got a new cell phone because my phone still works, and that's why I still had a phone.
Yeah,
and, so, and do I want a new phone? Yes. Do I want a new phone? No. But do I want a new phone? Yes. Oh, everybody has the iPhone and iPhone. We're on iPhone 10, 9, 11, 12. I don't know. We're on iPhone something. Everybody has the iPhone. They want an iPhone so I can get on Snapchat. I don't even have a Snapchat. Why do I want this iPhone so badly? But everybody else has one, and I'm able to fend off that pressure to buy an iPhone. Not that anything's wrong with it. They're amazing phones. Like if you got one, congratulations. But I have my Android still because it still works. And I'm like, it's not broken. It still works. Why go get a replacement one? Why get more shoes and more clothes when the clothes I have still fit, my shoes still in good condition?
Gotcha. So you've actually structured your life where, and again, there's the psychology of marketing and impulse driven marketing, which is exactly what it does. It's fear of missing out. You see it all on social media. You see influencers. You see sort of kind of like this liking principle that's used. Like generally people buy things from people that they like, so, or do business in that way. So there's a lot of psychology that influences our buying decisions, that makes us believe that we're making these decisions on our own. Even if we go down to the letter design, the colors that are being used, so on and so forth. All of this is very strategic and has been tested empirically to improve sales. And that's literally where we are. But you've actually kind of created a system for yourself where you shut off these tools that are being used to encourage impulse buy, fear of missing out, so on and so forth. So you don't have to struggle and deal with this fluctuation of, do I want to get something? Do I not want to get something? Because you're basically limiting what's being marketed to you is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. And I have a model that I go by because some individuals, and this is virtually everybody lifetime, you're going to come across large sums of money. That's a very broad term. So when I say large, I'm just saying in relativity. So if somebody's making minimum wage, if they now have a job making $15 an hour, okay, that's a large sum of money. If somebody hits the lottery, that's a large sum of money. If somebody is unemployed and they get a job, period, that's a large sum of money about to come into their life. I love that
point. All of this stuff is very relative.
Yes.
Because we played the comparison game where, okay, somebody's getting paid, but let's say somebody's getting paid $50 an hour, but I'm coming from a position where I'm just getting my life together and I'm starting out at 15 where I am. Like, that's a win.
Yeah.
You should not be comparing your 15 to somebody's 50 because we don't have all the context. We don't know the situation, so on and so forth. So I'm really happy that you have the self-awareness to understand relativity, because comparison is the thief of joy. And if we're constantly comparing ourselves, especially in our world, there's no way you can ever win because there's always somebody who has something bigger, better, and badder than you do.
Exactly. So I wish individuals would understand that before they log on to social media later, but I digress on that one. But yes, where I'm going with it was, okay, so if individuals come into a large sum of money, they should wait 90 days before spending it on items that are not necessities. So that means the rent, the mortgage, the lights, the gas, food, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the large sum of money. So I pretty much hit the lottery. I was unemployed, now I go to unemployed. Because once that money hits their bank account, there's always, oh my gosh, I get all this stuff that I couldn't get before. Yes, I understand that, but just sit on it and see if it's really, I really want this item, or I just want it because I saw it, it looked really cool, you know, it's a really nice bicycle and whatnot. And then even when they get a steady income, so they've been working at a job for a year or so, then take it down from 90 to 30 days. If they still want it after a month, okay, maybe they legitimately want it.
Yeah.
They have the means to go buy it. They paid all their bills. By all means, go buy it.
They get it.
So that's what I really live by when it comes to large sums of money. And then just in my day, they're like, all right, if I still want this 30 days from now, it's not going to take 30 days, people. You're going to know after about a week if you really still want it. And it's like a week later, you're like, why do I want that again? It's like,
absolutely,
you're going to see something else you want. And so that one going to get crossed off. It's a cycle.
It's this, you give yourself the capacity to test your desirability of a thing. Past the cool off period, right? So is this product still desirable past the cool off period? And to your point, a cool off period generally could be about 3 days.
Exactly.
Right? Once you hit that emotional high of having the thing, so to speak, right? Or engaging in an idea of wanting the thing, you literally 3 days to a week. I love 30 days, even 90 days for a major purchase. I love that idea of giving yourself the capacity to test the desirability of a thing over time. That's absolutely a great point. So, Jerome, I want to kind of transition a little bit from here. So we've talked a good bit about your upbringing. I would love to know more about Gullah Geechee culture, but we'll do this another time, whatever it may be, and your upbringing in that regard. So you've navigated life, learned a good deal from having early exposure to money as a child, had some messages taught to you or modeled to you in terms of savings and the importance of savings, and had the mindset to glean experiences from video games that then ultimately you use to build an empire, basically, which is absolutely a beautiful thing. You transition on. You said math is something that you're passionate about, solving problems. I'm hearing teased out in terms of your passions. You go into accounting. You graduate with an accounting degree. You ultimately go back and get your master's. You become a CPA, which is a certified public accountant. Again, great job. And if I'm not mistaken, and please, your passing rates were actually really high as compared to, because I know like most people when they sit for the CPA, they say all I need is a 75% to pass these sections?
And not even percent. It's just like it's like a base score. Like you get between 0 and 100, but it's not a actual percentage. It's just you need to score 75. And if you get harder questions right, they count for more towards that than if you answer easier questions.
Got you.
It's not even a percent. It's like you just need a base score of 75 and you pass. And it's like,
got you. But if I'm not mistaken, I want you to toot your own horn a little bit though, because I know people who sat for the CPA exam, and so you actually did really, really well on the CPA exam, and you knocked it out the park.
Yes, definitely. And so I didn't actually score well enough to get. They have an award set up. They being the AICPA, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, or NASBA, the National Association. I forgot what NASBA stands for. National Accounting Standards Boards Association. That's what NASBA stands for. And so they actually have an award where if you pass all 4 sections the first time around, you actually get a reward if you have the highest scores and whatnot. And so I actually failed the last section. I failed it by 2 points, and I can still tell you to this day the 2 questions I missed because I'm just that much of a perfectionist. So I'm like, man, it was the regulation section, it was the tax. So first section I did well. I made like an 81. Next section, which was it's like financial reporting. Then I did auditing, made 86, and so I think that was good. And I'm actually better auditing than accounting, but I have no passion to do auditing, which is why I don't work in auditing. But a lot of people are CPAs and going to accounting, they want to be auditors. I'm like, okay, knock yourself out. Me, not so much. But another section is called BCE, like other business concept and economics. It was a weird section. I got like an 81. So like I was doing well. Now I get to regulation. I'm just at this point, I'm being bombarded by different recruiters saying, hey, we're trying to lure you away from your employers. And I'm like, I'm studying, and I'm doing regulation. So I'm just studying the Internal Revenue Code and
Yep.
how you set up different entities, LLC, limited liability companies,
Yep.
LLPs, limited liability partnerships, and there's different tax treatments for all these different legal
Yes.
entities. I'm like, it's boring, it's dry. I have no passion for tax accounting, none. Like, you did good. Well, I work with some tax account now with the depreciation and the MACRS, Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System. People, this is supposed to sound boring. It's not exciting. Nobody cares about Section 279 expenses. You can Google what Section 279. Nobody cares. I don't care. You don't care. But this is the Internal Revenue Code. I only use this when I file my own taxes because I can take benefits for all the different tax benefits, which we'll talk about later, real estate and whatnot, and even my personal life with the above the line deductions and then
Yep.
the deductions that are below line, which are the static deductions, like you can actually put them together and whatnot. And so I actually did the regulation section. I missed by 2 points. I'm sad. I actually made a post on Facebook. I got my score like 4 in the morning, and I was just upset with myself, disappointed. The failures happen, fall down. People fall down. It happens. We'll get into that later with real estate. We already talked about some of my child. People fall down, but I expect myself to be able to pass that section because it's not the most difficult. The financial reporting is the most difficult. I beat that one the first time around. I should have beat the Internal Revenue Code. And when I went back and I studied at 4 in the morning, I literally unplugged all the TVs in my house, put up my failing scores on the mirror. No, seriously, Dr. You go on my page back from 2015 and still see these posts that I'm referring to. And so I put up this thing like, you failed, or are you a failure? And that's just a message to myself. So every day I came home, I had to look at that. And I'm like, this is inexcusable. So I actually rescheduled the exam. That's the first thing I did. And then I was just locked in my head for a 1 month straight, just going at every CPA review course I could go at, like just the free ones that are online, please don't pay for them. And going back to my CPA review books. And I'm just going at it, like, where did I fail? I knew the 2 questions I failed to. And I'm like, where did I miss it? Because I should have beat it by a wider margin, which is the second time I got an 85. Yep. And so it was just my lack of understanding, like just a small notion that the section I feared the most when it came to the actual Internal Revenue Code, I actually did well. That's like one of my strongest sections. They actually gave me like a little report, which was really cool, saying, here's where you did well, here's where you missed the mark. Okay. And so I'm looking at, I actually messed up with the different entities, which is why now I understand. If I'm a sole proprietorship, me and the entity are the same one. I'm just following a normal tax return on schedule.
Pass through income.
Exactly. If I have LLCs, then that one, it's a separate legal entity. It has a separate tax ID and it has certain benefits that come with it. Same when you have a C corporation versus an S corporation. S corporation pass through, C corporation, you get double.
Very important point though here. And I want to make sure that we not tether LLC, LLP with C Corp, S Corp. Because C Corp, S Corp are simply designations in terms of how you're taxed. They're not actual LLC or LLP in terms of the type of entity. And I think sometimes when I hear these conversations, like people make them seem like, oh, I'm an S Corp. Like, no, you're not an S Corp.
Yeah, there are the actual requirements.
It just frustrates me where we jump the gun and start having, and again, Jerome, I can have this conversation with you because you and I actually do this, right? We study this, we review it, we understand the nuances. This isn't just, we go in and read something real quick and then try to create a little seminar to make some money on an S Corp. Right? Like with this is real. This is people's lives. This is actual strategy and planning to ensure that someone has the best setup for their situation. Exactly. That support may not be the best setup for your situation. Now, this isn't what this conversation is about, but this is a pet peeve of mine. That's why we do this, because we love this and we want to support people. And this isn't just about some quick hack. It's not a hack. It's the IRS tax code. It's the tax code. Right?
I was having a conversation, and not to get too technical for the viewers, but there's something called a tax inversion. I was having a conversation with somebody probably a month ago. They're like, okay, I want to do a tax inversion. I'm going to set up a subsidiary in, let's say, Ireland. I'm like, that's cool and amazing, but that's not a tax inversion. You'd have to set up that subsidiary in Ireland, and that subsidiary in Ireland would have to purchase your domestic company that you already set up in the United States of America. And that's how you get the tax benefits that you're looking for, which nothing is legal about. And the person didn't really understand it, but they still want to do a tax inversion. I'm like, this might be
what? And Jerome, I'll be honest with you. Were they making any money?
Making any money? No, they're actually doing really well.
They're doing well? Okay.
Because I have finances, I can attest to that.
I get that too. Right. I get that, where people come to me and they'll ask me questions about certain things. And I'm like, well, before we even have that conversation, like, where are you in terms of your business and your business development? Have you worked with the Small Business Administration, SBA.gov, to get everything set up? Have you read the tax code, publication 535, business deductions, just to understand in a way that you set up your business, what things you can deduct as a business owner. Are you making any money? Are you profitable? Like, I literally have people coming to me wanting to engage in complex tax stuff, which I can educate, but I can't provide. I'm working on my EA, my enrolled agent designation.
Yes.
So hopefully I have that by the end of the year. But it's one of those things where it's like, yo, let's focus on making money. Let's focus on serving your customers. Let's focus on actually building a business model. We can come back to this other stuff a little bit later. You're going to be okay. But a lot of people want to get all this other stuff perfect, and it's not going to be perfect. So I do have a question for you. All right. I love this point that you made. It's like, I failed, but I'm not a failure.
Yes.
One of the things that I talk about a lot is self-compassion and how that is so important on the financial wellness journey. Why is it important? Because there's a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is, I made a mistake. Shame is, I am the mistake. And I quote that from Brene Brown. So if we navigate a space and we make mistakes and we can't externalize the mistake from ourselves and our character, but we characterize ourselves as the mistake, how do you grow? You can't, because it ultimately kind of becomes a form of your identity. So tell me a little bit more about that quote. You put that on your mirror. What prompted that? And what prompted that?
Okay, so you remember earlier when I was talking about my childhood passions and I said football. So anybody that's played a game of football, especially if you're a very small individual, such as I was as a child and you I am as a man, I got knocked down a lot, literally. I remember being in Campbell Middle School, Smyrna, Georgia. We played a game called Bull in the Ring. This is one of the most intense football drills that I've ever experienced. I don't even know if they're still doing this, given the awareness of concussion awareness. So imagine standing in a circle. The circle is comprised of your 30, 40, 50 teammates. You're standing in the middle circle, you're jogging in place, and you're spinning around as you're jogging. The coach is going to point to one of those players, and they're about a good 10 yards from you. They're going to charge at you with all their force, and you're going to charge back at them, and you're going to collide in the middle.
Wow.
If you get knocked down, you get back up, you go back to chopping, and then you still have to have another 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more teammates get charged at you. And some of them are offensive linemen who could easily, even for being in the state of Georgia, being in middle school, they're probably 200 pounds. And at this point, I'm probably like 120 pounds. So I'm hitting kids that are like 80 size. And so I got knocked down a lot. I'm not going to lie. Man, no. I got knocked down. I was like, I got knocked down so hard. I thought I broke my little arm. I'm like, man, bro, get back up, Jerome. And that's the best part about football. Like, I took that through life. That's the biggest lesson I learned from playing that game. Like, when you get knocked down, you get back up. And so that's where it really came from. Like, yeah, I failed. Of course, I was supposed to knock the kid down. I flew back like 10 yards. I'm like, man, I didn't. Why am I airborne right now, Dr. Thomas? It's like, man, that kid hit me. Shouts out to all my teammates from Campbell Middle School. And so from that moment, like, I felt like I had been knocked down, which I was. I was so excited, almost be done with the CPA exam. And I'm like, I was this close. Like, literally, it's like being in a championship game. Like, you remember when the 49ers played the Baltimore Ravens and it was Ray Lewis's last game, and maybe they got cheated out of that last call where it was pass interference. And so they were this close. The 49ers were this close to winning that game, making it a historic comeback, or they just botched it. Sorry, 49ers. It happens. Still love y'all. But when that situation happened, that's where I felt. I was like, I'm this close. And so what triggered in my head was that moment back from Campbell Middle School football. And I was like, you know what? I got knocked down. I'm hurt. I'm feeling sad and whatnot. Am I going to stay on this ground? When I was 13, 14 years old, the answer was no. And then at that point, when I'm in like my mid-20s, the answer was like, I'm not going to stay on this ground. Like, get up, dust yourself off. I felt that same fire, that rage I felt because I'd been knocked down as a kid. I felt it as an adult, courtesy of the CPA exam. And so I put that on there like, yes, you failed, but are you a failure? And that's what they teach in the actual sport of football, or at least if you're in a good program or you have good people running it. That's really what the game teaches. Like, yeah, you're going to get knocked down, but are you going to get back up? Like, yeah, you want to take some losses. And that's the amazing part of sports culture, baseball, basketball, soccer. Yes, you may have failed in this context, but are you going to be a failure? Or are you going to be a loser? And it's like, no, go back out there and go play again. Go try hard again. So that's what really prompted that moment. And that's really inside that rage and passion and fire. And then 1 month later, I take it and I pass it. Did much better than any other section. So it worked itself out.
I love it. Jerome, I want to commend you on something here. I've been talking a lot about toxic masculinity this month, and I'm going to continue to have this conversation. And one of the areas of toxic masculinity is the inability to be vulnerable about our situations, and to basically go into our caves and basically try to self-medicate, whether self-medicating is in the way that we're doing it optimal or not. We try to do that on our own, and we try to shield ourselves from ridicule or feeling as if we're less than, or we don't measure up with other men. And I just want to say that I really appreciate you sharing that story about not passing one of the portions of the CPA exam, simply because we live in a space where we don't allow for people to see that we have and actually I don't even believe that failure is real. I just think that it's a consequence of choice, and then we have a decision based on that consequence to make another choice. It's when we stop making choices to move is ultimately when we fail. But I just don't believe in a concept of failure anymore. I used to, because we can, like you said, you were able to dust yourself up, get back up, knock out this section, the one that you didn't do as well as you thought that you would have, and do even better in that particular area. So thank you for being vulnerable, being humble enough to share a real experience, and then actually modeling the type of mindset that I think people need to see and know, because a lot of times people only see where you are, not what you had to do to get to where you are. So again, my hat's off. Thank you for bucking against that trend and being vulnerable there.
Yes.
So as I think about all these experiences, right? You pass the CPA exam, you're doing well, you're a CPA, you actually have a higher level position as a CPA. You know your stuff, Jerome. A lot of people at this point in time, I actually kind of go back to your childhood story, like when you saved up all the money and then you purchased the thing, but yet you still kept going, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sensing something in your DNA, okay?
Yeah.
So a lot of people would say, all right, I've gotten my college education. I come from where I come from, whether or not it's a rough scenario situation. I sat for the CPA exam. Got a lot of people who want to be CPAs, especially African-American CPAs. Let's just be real. Again, another salute to you and hats off there, which then just demonstrates if you want to do this, you can do this. And Jerome, you're an example of that, my man. And then you are being courted by companies, you get into the space, you're doing the work, you're in a high level position. A lot of people would just stop there and say, you know what, I'm just going to ride this out, and I'm going to put my money into a 401k plan. I'm going to save. I might live beneath my means, but this is going to be it for me. You didn't do that. You ultimately decided to say, all right, is this enough for me, basically? Yay or nay? And then, nay, it's not enough for you. And then maybe let me entertain getting into real estate. So now you're a CPA who works in that space, but then also is now engaging literally at the front end of the process, right, of having real estate. Tell me about what led you into real estate, what inspired you into this space, basically.
All right, so y'all remember when I was just talking about failing the CPA exam section and having to do the regulation section over again, which is virtually the Internal Revenue Code? And so I actually looked at that, and as I'm reading, going back through it, learning everything I can learn, the way it's structured, earned income, passive income, portfolio income. So
Yep.
for the viewers, if you have earned income, that virtually means you get a W-2, you have a normal 9 to 5 job, or maybe if you work in a warehouse, maybe it's longer, shorter. Virtually, you work for somebody else, they'll give you a W-2. You're gonna pay federal income taxes, depending on what state you're gonna be in. You're gonna pay state income taxes. You're gonna pay SSI, Social Security, Disability, Medicaid, Medicare, et cetera, et cetera. And all this is gonna come out of check as a function of being an employee. And so actually the way it's structured, the individuals that have earned income, they get taxed a lot higher than individuals that have portfolio income, which is virtually you have an investment, you put in maybe an index fund, maybe your index fund pays dividends, you pay a lower tax rate on those dividends, which are considered capital gains. And then passive income, virtually you own something such as a rental property, and you're actually generating revenue So you're still gonna pay your federal income taxes as well as your state income taxes, but you're not gonna have to pay like SMI, SSI, Medicare, et cetera, et cetera. And so as I was going through that, I was like, okay, I'm starting to get up there with these higher positions, making more money. Taxes are killing me because I'm single with no kids. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I either gotta get into real estate or I gotta start paying people for their kids every year. Like, hey man, tell little DeQuantavius I'm your dad if anybody asks him. I'm like, I can't be doing this. It's just too much. Single with no exemptions is not the move, people. And so
It's not the move.
there's a lot that come with being a parent. Shouts out to you, Dr. Thomas, and all the other parents out there. I'm like, I'm really, if you see me like get married and have a kid in the next few years, you know why. It's like, oh, you fell in love, man. That Internal Revenue Code. I'm trying to tell you. I cringe every time I got to do my tax. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I'm looking at that. So once again, remember what we talked about when I was a child, like strategizing with the Legend of Zelda or even selling those Airheads and Chief. Okay, what's the next step? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit here strategizing, trying to be that forward thinker that I believe I am. I'm like, okay, you can't keep just going to work, Jerome, and this is me talking to myself. I can't just keep going to work, making more money, paying more taxes. This is a very vicious cycle. Is individuals exceed up and they actually get in different tax brackets. Some say, you know, I need more income, but income that's not gonna be taxed as heavily. Okay, let's try portfolio income first. Okay, we buy the index funds, but those returns are pretty small comparison. Like a large amount of capital has to be invested up front to actually get dividends you can live off. When I'm saying large, I'm talking about millions of dollars. Like you have to throw that in. Yeah, millions, yes, like definitely in the 7-figure range. So I'm like, okay, that's not gonna work. Interest rates are really low when you have these different savings accounts depending on who you go to. So I'm like, all right, we need passive income. Okay, so let's go to the We Buy Black convention. It was in 2018. It was in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm not sure if your viewers are familiar with the Battery. That's where the Atlanta Braves play. It's a very large commerce area in Smyrna. It is just past Smyrna. It's actually in Smyrna Vinings, which is a part of Atlanta, Georgia. And so we're talking about the northwestern Atlanta region. So I go to We Buy Black convention, and We Buy Black, it obviously is to support Black entrepreneurs, Black businesses, and whatnot. And I go back to my youth when I saw a bunch of Black people, Stokely Carmichael, Dr. Angela Davis, Muhammad Ali, Ellen Baker. I can go on and on. And I'm saying, okay, one thing they preach is like, okay, you have to do more for your community. It's not just enough, okay, I made it. I made it, quote unquote, I made it. I'm doing well. Okay, what about the average Black man or Black woman? Our community is not performing well. So let's go to We Buy Black convention, met up with a lot of other aspiring Black entrepreneurs. And as these different speakers are coming up, two words came out of all of their mouths. And these individuals, I mind you, they are millionaires. And so it's real estate. Next one, yeah, I do this. I also have real estate. Yeah, I do this. Also do have real estate. Even when I was talking to you earlier about hip hop and the individuals I love, like I'm actually listening to Tip Harris being 13, 14 years old, listening to trap music. And he's talking about at the age of like 22, 23, having all these investments in real estate, or even other individuals I like Killer Mike, same thing, real estate, David Banner, real estate. And so that's where it all come full circle. Like there might be something to this real estate. And one of the individuals who's actually up there speaking about his story. And so when he was telling it, he actually was selling his book in the back of the actual We Buy Black convention. And it was like $10. So take $10 out of my pocket. Sound familiar? Remember those Airheads? Remember those hot Cheetos?
Yep.
You got to invest if you want to make it. So I buy this book. That's actually the first book I read about real estate investing. And then I actually,
So can you remember the name of that book?
yeah, not off the top of my head.
Okay, so we'll link up on the back end, and I'll include a link in the video.
Definitely, yeah. And then same with some of the other books I'm gonna mention. Like I didn't have the name of the titles, but then after that, it wasn't just start there and like you read one book. Okay, let's do it, Dr. Thomas. I'm about to be a real estate. No. It doesn't work like that. Reading various articles, just go on Google, reading various articles, watching people like DJ Envy, like I said, Killer Mike, David Bann, these other individuals that are in real estate. And once again, it's just a side hustle. This isn't their passions either. It's just a side hustle that they're involved in. Watching different interviews on the Breakfast Club by people coming on there, all of them speaking once again real estate. And it was crazy to me about real estate. They didn't have to actually have formal education to get into real estate. And they don't actually have to have a large amount of capital either, depending on how they want to enter into real estate. So I had to learn about different aspects. And not just real estate. It's not just rental property. Some people actually get into flipping, something that I'm not involved in. Some people just do the buy and hold. Some people, they actually serve as a middleman between the seller and the buyer, and they take a commission off of the real estate purchase. So actually understanding where my lane wanted to be. And so I decided rental property. Okay, let me put down a deposit, a down payment on a home, let me rent it out, take the passive income, what all comes with that. And so I was reading another book, one that was about the Internal Revenue Code and how it's impacted by landlords. So it's the Internal Revenue Code, but it's tailored to landlords. And based on the tax implications, once again, this is all beforehand. You know what? this actually sounds like something I want to do because the tax benefits were amazing because you get more write-offs than you do as a normal person. So as an employee, what you want to jump in?
No, I was just gonna say, I just think it's beautiful thinking about how your story just comes full circle.
Yes.
Because the very section of the CPA exam that you failed initially or didn't pass initially,
Yes.
had you go back and re-look at entities and a setup of entities and an understanding the tax consequences for these, which then actually triggered you to start thinking about this even more. So you actually, and then if we take this back to Zelda, you had to pass that level to get to the next level, bro.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
The same with all the math and
Oh
how.
my goodness.
Yes, it's like how my
That's
passion for math is
powerful.
going to come back. Yes,
That's
it's that thing with
powerful.
math.
Like
Yes,
you could like somebody, this is the thing. Somebody right now is about to give up on something. That's absolutely the level that they need to execute at the next level. And they can't see this as a blessing. Come
exactly.
on now. Like let's be 100. Like somebody's watching this right now who's about to give up on something that they need to pass this level so they can thrive at the next level. Like y'all, don't give up. Put in the work. You failed, but are you a failure? No, you're not a failure. Right?
Exactly.
Just tool up, get what you need to get right here, because this is going to prepare you. And to your point, Jerome, what you said earlier, conceptually, there are some things that you needed to understand better. Your
Yes,
concepts. So in order to execute, you have to understand the nuances of the concepts that you're working with anyway. And it's okay if it takes a few times. I know people where it's taking them 3-4 times to pass the CPA exam. They're incredibly successful right now. I know people that took them 5 times to pass the certified financial planner examination. And they're successful right now. You are not a failure. This is what the process looks like. Get the concepts, understand that stuff so you can execute at the next level. Jerome, I'm sorry. That just,
I
I
was up.
felt that 100.
I know the feeling in spirit, definitely. And even going back to my passion in mathematics, remember, if I'm not passionate about math, I'm not good at math, I don't actually master my multiplication tables, master division, adding and subtraction, which means I don't actually get the experience of saving up my allowance to actually buy the video game and whatnot. And I don't get to take that forward into middle school where I actually set up my quote unquote empire selling hot Cheetos as well as Airheads, which is essentially entrepreneurship, saving money, once again, reinforcing what I've already learned. And math is actually passion that drove me to get into accounting, which led to CPA, which now leads to real estate. Like it's all a journey and process, people. It don't happen overnight. I didn't just wake up, hey, I'm a CPA. It's like, no. I remember me, Dr. Thomas, 18 years old. I'm just out of high school. Like, CPA, what's that stand for? I didn't even know what that was. Somebody said CPA in high school. Like, you good accounting, you should be a CPA. What's that?
Exactly. And then
Is that
honestly, if you grew up, if you come from a similar space that I come from, like nobody walked around saying I wanted to be a CPA.
exactly?
Like that just was not cool. Like even to say that I like math or I want to do more math stuff, like you got no play, especially if you were trying to talk to a young lady. You
Yeah.
have to try to kick some game and say, hey, so like what type of stuff are you interested in? I like
Yes,
math.
exactly. Making amortization schedules. Like I remember being in college, learning about stuff. When am I going to use this? And crazy thing, back to it's a process. Getting into math and getting into accounting, I use those same amortization schedules to figure out how I could pay off my student loans early and make them amortization schedules, which we're about to get into, to do this, to do the real estate. I don't show up to the closing table. Hey, what's my mortgage going to be? I know my mortgage, my principal, my interest. I know my insurance, have a good estimate of it. You can get it for free. We'll get into it later, as well as how much I'm going to be paying per month in like property taxes and whatnot. And all this comes back to just passions and experiences from when I was younger.
Transferable. All of those skills were transferable.
Exactly.
Nothing's a wasted experience. That's
Exactly.
why it's so important to be present so that you can receive the present and then you can engage in the present to optimize your future. Like no, there's no such thing as a wasted experience, and you are the epitome of that.
Exactly. Like, and that's what just like the underlying theme of this actual interview or this conversation. Make sure whatever you're experiencing, because people are going to have different childhoods, make sure you're learning from it. Even if it's a horrendous experience, it's individuals out throughout the city of Atlanta and the metro Atlanta area that used to sell drugs as teenagers. And what they learned from that is, hey, if I take this money and I go buy a bunch of jewelry, nice cars, it's no different than my allowance situation. I took it, bought candy, I'm back broke. They took their drug money they bought cars, jewelry, they're back broke. And so they're back trapping, doing something they necessarily don't want to do. But if
That's
they do
with a lot of
something
risk.
like, exactly. And if they do like some individuals, they take the money, I can actually get studio equipment and then I can actually record a mixtape, and that's exactly what Killer Mike did. And then the rest is literally history. And so it's really whatever experience you're having in your youth throughout the course of your life, even in our older ages, like definitely learning from it. But back to your question, when I was actually doing the Internal Revenue Code, I was reading that book about it, and it was tailored toward landlords. I'm like, okay, this is rental property. This is actually in line with what I'm trying to do, i.e., pay less in taxes while making more money. Read another book about the ins and out of actually owning a rental property. No, it's not just buy the property and collect your income. You have maintenance charges. You're going to have some maintenance, even if it's just cleaning out the P trap. It's, if you look under your bathroom sink, you're going to see a large it's a pipe. It's not, it's relatively large. Relatively speaking, it's large, and then you're going to see it make a U shape. That's called a P trap. You have to clean out maybe once a year. It gets clogged up with human hair and dirt and whatnot. It's not that difficult. Clean out the P traps. Your air vents, they have to be blown out because they're going to accumulate dust. If you have a fireplace, that needs to be cleaned out as well. If you have a water heater, which we all do, you need to flush at least once a year because sediments will build up. And these don't sound like difficult tasks. They aren't. But if you have to pay a plumber, pay a hot water technician every time something breaks, oh my gosh, the handle on the door, like the latch, sometimes because the door is heavy, like it actually breaks it where the door opens and closes, like those three latches on the door where you can see them when you close them, those actually shift downward over time. And so you have to adjust the actual strike plate, and that's what the door actually latches into. You can easily unscrew it, rescrew it just like maybe a centimeter or two lower, or you get a hammer and actually hit it down gently, and you can actually fix the door like that. And if you cannot do these simple tasks, anybody that wants to start a real estate, you're just going to go bankrupt. And that's what the book was about. So after going through the We Buy Black convention, watching numerous individuals from numerous people, reading books, that's how I said, okay, I get into real estate. So
So
feeling prepared now.
one thing I want to just interject really quickly. So the books that you're talking about, everybody, we're going to get the titles of those and make sure that we list those down in the link section so that you can review them. All right. So, but a great point. So Jerome, would you say that prior to engaging in this process that you were a handyman?
Handyman? Yes, and I can trace that back to my childhood as well. I remember a situation where, okay, maybe, and I'm pretty sure we've all been there, and I'll trace back to college and even a situation from high school. So we had a treadmill, it was downstairs. I used to run on it, and it actually broke like right on the part where I actually run on. It was a wood, like it was a piece of wood that was actually in the treadmill, and it actually broke, like actually dented, cracked in the middle. And so me not knowing it, it was senior skip day, so I skipped school because it's senior skip day. I'm 18, and so I actually went home, got my mother's tools, and I actually opened up the treadmill. No YouTube video, nothing. I just started taking bolts off of it and actually opened up the treadmill. I was actually able to replace that piece of wood with another piece of wood, and it was relatively fixed. And so that was when that one. It kind of like sometimes the tracks will slide to the right, the actual portion I run on, the portion that actually cycles. And even from my youth, I remember playing with Hot Wheels toys, which was like, they're probably my favorite toy as always. But I actually still have these, and they actually had Hot Wheels, and this is once again back in the 90s, where they actually gave me a wrench, and I could actually use it to actually unscrew and take the cars apart and put them back together. And when I came to college, and this is the more relevant story, I have a car, my 97 Ford Taurus. It kept breaking because it's an old car. And I'm like, you know what? I cannot afford to keep paying people to fix this car, or I couldn't afford to pay them to fix it all. Like, I'm a sophomore in college. I'm like, you know what? I'm getting some toolboxes. Once again, put that investment out there. I went to AutoZone, spent about $90 on some tools, got my toolbox, started changing brake pads, spark plugs, anything on the engine. I probably changed it. Alternators, I've changed the radiator, I've changed the upper and lower tie rods. Oh my gosh, I changed the thermostat, and that's actually the piece that actually lets the antifreeze or the water, depending on what coolant you have in your car, flow into your engine to cool it down. Like, mine was actually broken. It was open up too much. The serpentine belt. And virtually, if you don't have a serpentine belt, your AC won't work. Your hot water heater won't work. Your car's gonna overheat, so it'll be going soon. The battery, etc. And so I'm just under the hood, just changing this stuff like spark plug wires, everything. Ignition coils, just changing it. TPS sensors, changing it. Oxygen sensors, I'm just going down there changing it. And so to answer your question, yes, that's how I actually became a handyman. Something would break, I would fix it, and then I didn't notice. I was just like, I'm just trying to save money.
But this is the thing, though. You became a handyman by basically learning how to be handy.
Yes.
Right. So it's not like somebody came and they just showed you the ropes and you just YouTube X, Y, and Z. You actually just engaged in the process of doing. Right. And that's such an important concept as we think about this, is that we become the thing by doing the thing.
Exactly.
Winston Marsalis, an incredibly an icon in terms of jazz music, was at a school one day, and a kid asked him, "What is it that I need to do to be great in terms of a great musician?" And he basically told that kid that you need to be a great musician. And the kid said, "Well, how do I do that?" He said, "Just by starting the day. You become by being, and you just do that gradually over time. And even when you don't see that you've become it, other people start recognizing that you are." And it's just a weird thing in terms of we don't ever really see ourselves becoming or having arrived when everybody else can see that we've crossed the threshold, because there's still this mental thing in our head. So you've become the thing by basically being the thing. So to your point, you read books, you looked at savings from the tax code perspective. You read another book in terms of managing overhead, which again, we're going back to business again, right? In general, like you can have your revenue, but if your operating expenses are insanely high, then that's going to eat away at your profitability. Okay. So before you engage in this process, you were excited about it as passive income, Grand Theft Auto. You were then thinking about the tax consequences, which then ultimately is reflected back to the story that you told about the CPA exam.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went to the We Buy Black convention and heard a lot of people say that, all right, I do real estate isn't my main thing per se necessarily, but it's one thing amongst many things that I do. But that was the most consistent thing that you heard while you were there. So it's like, well, I have my main thing, which is a great position, great job. Why not consider real estate as a more effective way to leverage my cash flow and minimize the tax consequences so that I can have more, earn more over time? At the tail end of that, you picked up a couple of books. One of the books was like, all right, if you're going to do this, you need to manage your cost, right? Because if you can't manage your cost, then no matter how much money you are making, it doesn't matter because it's going to be eaten up by cost. And it's even more so important that you do it yourself. So is that a pretty good synopsis of where we are right now?
Yeah, very good.
All right. So we're here, you're reading books, you're tooling up, you're getting information. And again, we're going to list those books in the chat section. When did you get to the point to where you're like, all right, I'm consuming all this information to I'm ready to actually act?
Right, exactly what you just said. You remember what you said about if you want to be a great musician, you have to be a great musician, start the day. Like we become by doing and we become by being. Exactly. And then I'm looking at this point like, okay, Jerome, you read these books, you watched all these articles, you went to We Buy Black convention, you watched numerous interviews. Like I can't even describe to your audience how much time I've actually spent looking into real estate before I got into real estate.
Preparing.
It wasn't just, don't just read these 3 books. Okay, I'm ready. No. You need to sit there and just consume. As much time we spend on social media, as much time we spend eating out at restaurants, that same energy just needs to be diverted to just consuming real estate and understanding every aspect, what's going to go well, what's going to go wrong, and how to come back from it, and I'll tie into it later. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, you know what? We read a lot of books. Let's get on Zillow. There are a lot of different websites. I use Zillow. And so I got on Zillow. It's like a website where people list their home for sale. And let's get into them. Let's start using everything we read, everything I read in those books. Let's start applying it. So what's the number one thing you got to know about real estate? Most important feature, everybody, this is an opinion, this is a fact. Location. Do not buy a rental property in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, and think you're going to rent it out for $1,500 a month.
Yeah,
Don't think you're going to have a tenant. It's not going to happen. It's not by anything. It's just in the middle of nowhere. It's not by the interstate. It's not by the mall. It's not by the airport. Just in the middle of nowhere. So I'm like, okay, what's a good location? Well, I know I'm in the city of Atlanta. I'm in the Metro Atlanta area. We'll talk about the Metro Atlanta area. You know, I'm in the city of Atlanta. So what really drives the city of Atlanta with regards to where people want to live? Okay, it needs to be affordable because it's very expensive to live in Atlanta, courtesy of all the corporations that come down here. They have to have access to Interstate 20, I-285, I-75/85, and these are the main interstates. So 285 encompasses the city of Atlanta. I-20 is normally used to get to 285 as well as 75 north, 75 south, which is also 75, 85 and whatnot. And so I'm like, okay, so it has to be close to these interstates. especially I-20, especially 285, which if you know the location of my rental property, it's actually literally, it's 8 minutes from Hartsfield Jackson Airport. That's the airport in the city of Atlanta. It's really in College Park, but we'll say the city of
Yeah.
Atlanta. Like we're just going to talk generally here. And so it's 8 minutes from the airport, and it's about 6 minutes from the intersection between 75, 85 North and 285. So it's prime real estate in the area. I still get calls all the time about my rental property and people want to be there. Okay, so location, very important. So let's start finding locations. What communities I want to invest in? Back to the We Buy Black convention.
Hold on
Back
one
to my
second. Hold on one sec. So I just want to clarify something really here. Not location, again, to your point, not location in terms of literally what you feel is best.
yes.
But so this is the thing where people get this stuff wrong when they go into entrepreneurship. Sometimes entrepreneurship becomes a power play, right? Because it becomes about me and what I think is best, and then somebody's just going to buy it. That's not how the real world works. When you go into business, you are literally becoming a servant, basically. And I don't think people really realize this concept here, because you become the highest level of a servant, actually, when you become an entrepreneur or business, because you really need to be thinking about what's going to be in the best interest of my clientele every step of the way, and be obsessed about what they want and not what I want, right? So getting back to this toxic masculinity, a lot of us fellas, man, we get into stuff and we want to have power. And then you cap your growth because you want to control and have power over everything and dictate everything. Actually, it's the reverse. It's like when you can actually give up power and think about what's in the best interest of those that you're trying to serve, is where you actually gain power. And we don't get it. Jerome, you get it. You just basically said, I'm thinking about my customer or my clientele in terms of location, because they don't want to be stuck in traffic all day. Right? Especially if you're in Atlanta, one of the first things you're thinking about is like, how far is this away from my job? And do I have options in terms of how to get to my job in that 20 is shut down?
Exactly.
So good point.
Exactly. Remember where it came from. Middle school. Shouts out to Griffin Middle School in Smyrna, Georgia. And for the record, just in case anybody's been listening very intently, I said I played football at Campbell Middle School. Griffin Middle School did not have a football team, so we would play at Campbell Middle School, which was probably 10 minutes away. Gotcha. So once again, Griffin Middle School, what happened? I was selling Jolly Ranchers and bubblegum. What did the little kids say? My customers, what did they say? We don't like the Jolly Ranchers and bubblegum. And so what did I do at 14 years? They don't like it. I went like, well, hey, I like Jolly Ranchers, so I'm going to keep selling them. No. The customers, people paying, don't like it. Okay, get rid of them. Let's try Airheads. Let's get the Hot Cheetos, and it worked out well versus the alternative. So that's where it instinctually comes from. Like, yeah, it all ties back in. And so once again, you pick a very amazing location. So, okay, a location's good. Okay, that's the area. And which communities I want to invest in? Back to the We Buy Black convention, back to my infatuation with politics as a youth, with Stokely Carmichael, Ella Baker, Dr. Angela Davis. Okay, let me invest in some of the similar communities that I came out of. So definitely growing up in Stone Mountain, Georgia, in DeKalb County, even with Smyrna, Georgia, I'm looking at Cobb County, I'm looking at DeKalb County, I'm looking at Fulton County, where my rental property is actually located. It's actually in Fulton County, in these areas and whatnot. And so I'm like, all right, this is a heavily populated Black area. Like literally, it's all like 95% Black. They have a situation that we see an all too familiar occurrence. Once again, this is back to politics and just uplifting Black people, the community I'm a proud member of. Okay, we have a bad situation, and I'm going to use the term bad situation, where you have Black tenants, white landlords. And so when you have this setup that's eerily similar to the history of the United States of America, where all this wealth is being created for the white community, which I have nothing against whatsoever, by Black people, that's seen in my eyes as a problem. Like, we can take that same setup and actually just have Black landlords with Black tenants and keep that dollar circulating in our community. So instead of saying staying for an average of 6 hours actually hits our pocket and leaving to another community, now it's circulating back into it. And because I am a Black landlord and I'm investing in a Black community, I'm a lot more hands-on and a lot more into that role when you say actually being a servant landlord. Like, I still text my tenant. I'm still in touch with the HOA president. And so we're on really good terms as well. And we talk about how the problem with landlords coming in, because it's not so much that when white people come in like, oh my gosh, the neighborhood's going to stress. It's just they're not a community. They don't live there. They don't shop on that side of town because it's still very segregated within the Deep South. And so they're not going to spend their dollars like, man, not because of, oh gosh, Black people here. No. It's just they're going to spend their dollar in their community. Whereas me, somebody that's more familiar with the area, I'm also going to go to the Kroger that's right down the street from my rental property. I'm also going to go to the IHOP that's down the street from my rental property. And once again, see that dollar, that black dollar that I just earned for my tenant, it's back circulating in that community. And so that's why I wanted to definitely go into our community and actually start breaking that up.
So I love where you're going with this, Jerome. Before we like really dive into your second point, because I know you were going there, is that for you to be a landlord, it goes beyond just being able to get some passive income. You're also looking at this as a way of shifting power dynamics, encouraging fairer treatment, so to speak. Not saying that if somebody's a white landlord, they're not providing fair treatment or whatever it may be, but you understand the significance of being a landlord and how you can leverage that as a way of also serving your own, not just being served by your tenants, but also serving your own, both your tenant and the community in which you live, to your point in terms of understanding the importance of circulating money within the community to drive growth. Would you say that is that a sentiment that you see expressed in the books that you've read or at the We Buy Black convention or whatever it may be? Or is that just a higher calling that you have in terms of wanting to monetize, but also wanting to do good for the community?
Okay, so it's a little both. So definitely that wasn't included in any of the books I read. Like I'm trying to think back to the first book I read, because that was actually written by a black real estate guru and whatnot. And then also when we see an individual, the second two books I referenced, they were written by a white gentleman. And so on that one, I don't believe that point was actually emphasized in either of the three books. And it's because the problem with landlords, when they actually get into it, they view the rental property as just an asset owned. It's going to be fully depreciated, tax write-off, et cetera, from a very monetized standpoint. So it definitely more so with the higher calling back to when I was a child and I saw, hey, Muhammad Ali didn't have to say anything. Let's just be clear with individuals. He's a phenomenal boxer, worldwide champion. He could have just boxed and that's that. He didn't have to say anything on behalf of his community, his people, but he said, I'm not just going to be some boxer. And even when we look at modern day with Colin Kaepernick, I'm not just going to be some boxer, some athlete. Like, I have a responsibility to my community. And we see this in every community in the United States of America. In our community, like sometimes we drop the ball here, or sometimes, yeah, we just drop the ball here. And so when we see that happening, they say, you know what? I'm not just going to do it like the way I've read and learned. I'm going to put my own unique spin on it. So I understand, like, when I'm bringing to an individual, if that individual happens to be a single mother, okay, this is the only source of income from the household. If this individual gets sick, there's no way she can pay the rent and pay the actual normal living expenses such as food. So if something happened where slow down, like say my tenant would have caught COVID, like, okay, they're not going to be able to pay the rent on time. So let me just delay that. And since we're being vulnerable, like that story actually happened, unfortunately. Like, she's good, she survived, which is awesome and amazing. But I'm like, she got COVID, couldn't go to work, had to quarantine for 2 weeks. Of course she can't make rent. So yeah, let's just delay it. And so that, and I don't charge late fees either, like, because nobody's been abusing it to this point. So it's like, I know that life happens. People get laid off, they have to get jobs. I know my margin, I know my markup. So I'm like, okay, worst case scenario, if something like that did happen, I could just decrease it and just cover my costs. And that way I don't go in the hole and this person doesn't lose their home.
See,
Because
that's
it's,
powerful though. That's coming back to knowing your numbers though.
yes, that math will save you.
And like you mentioned before, when you navigate this process, you revisited this over and over and over again and spend hours and hours and hours. And in essence, kind of like this whole notion of living beneath your means, so to speak, you understood that, yeah, I'm going to embed some wiggle room in the event that something happens so that I can embrace those hits that are going to happen. And unfortunately, the pandemic did happen. And this was like right when you started the process too.
Yes,
Like, talk about perfect timing.
I brought the property right in the beginning of the pandemic, February of 2020. I was like, man, I just bought that rental property and the pandemic hit. People, if you run them numbers, you'll be fine. It's like, you see some landlords, and not talk about my competitors, but they are competitors. And so you see landlords, when we talk about SWOT analysis, being in Griffin Middle School selling the candy, like the competitors, something I noticed that they're doing, they're buying too much house. They have too high mortgages. I have a setup to where I can cover my mortgage on my personal home and my rental property if my tenant were to move out or lose her job or could not pay the rent for some reason. So I'm fine. But you see some landlords who have over leveraged, and this is the story of like, and a lot of your viewers will read about this, people who've actually went bankrupt in real estate. They bought all these properties, but they can't cover the mortgages without the tenants.
Of course.
And so when that happens, and you see something like COVID, where you see people lose their jobs, or just even maybe you just have 4 or 5 year tenants move out at the same time, as a landlord, I'm still gonna be responsible for that mortgage, those HOA payments, et cetera, et cetera. So I had to figure it out, like, okay, how much mortgage can I actually forward. And so I actually did that, and this was set up long before this, like just to talk about being a forward thinker. When I was actually buying my primary residence, which I got before the rental property and whatnot, I was saying, okay, they approved me for, let's say, $300,000 or whatever. That's like what I was approved for, or something to that extent. Okay, I can buy a $300,000 house and be quote unquote house poor, and all my money going to a mortgage,
Yep.
or I can cut that by a fraction, let's say half, a fourth, a third, and use that excess amount and actually go get a rental property later on in life. And that way I know, worst come to worst, I can cover everything.
Yep.
And so I chose the latter. And so even with my prime home, like I undershot it tremendously. And that's where I was able to get the mortgage on the rental property. So instead of buying one big house, bought like 2 homes, and it's like one's being rented out. And
Yeah. Boom. So quick question for you. So your first point was like location, location, location.
Yes.
And then I think a great second point tie-in is understanding the cost. Not necessarily the maintenance cost, because we're talking about a very different thing here. Maintenance cost is like after you've gotten the property and you actually maintain it. So when I think about affordability, I think about it twofold. I think about just the standard expense of purchasing the thing or the item, and then the ongoing maintenance expense of what it's going to cost to maintain. And then we have overall expense. A lot of people only think, can I afford the thing in terms of just buying it, but not having the money to maintain it over time. And to your point, one of the best ways you do that is at the front end of the process. So it could be a couple of things can happen here. You can be over leveraged in terms of having too much property, right? That you don't have the resources or reserve to cover in the event that something happens. But then you could have paid too much for these properties, right? Which means that your mortgage balance is going to be higher, which then ultimately eats into your cash flow. So talk to me a little bit about, again, location, and then understanding that you win on the front end, not on the back end. Just because you have a property doesn't mean that you have the profits that you're hoping to derive if you bought it expensively. So location, one piece. The other piece is, again, you were talking about, purchasing the homes, price point, making sure that you run the numbers to say that based on this price point and what I can sell this home for in the market that I've chosen, my mortgage, reasonably priced, and whether or not my margins are going to be sufficient. Talk to me about that.
All right, so perfect. So just to wrap it up on location, like I said, just know the landscape of your city or your community. Where do people want to live? Not necessarily myself or yourself. Where do people want to live in Atlanta, Georgia? It needs to be affordable. It needs to be somewhere close to I-20, 285 or 75, 85. That's pretty much where individuals want to live. In addition, when you look at these communities, when I'm talking about location, understand just because you buy a rental property doesn't mean you can rent it out. If you buy a quote unquote rental property in a place that has an HOA, it's like a housing organization, so homeowners association. Homeowners association, some of them have bylaws, and for good reason, saying that you cannot come in here as a landlord, buy this property and rent it out.
Yep.
And the reason being, and it goes back to me wanting to actually become a landlord, because landlords, when they take over, and when I say take over, they own 50% or more units, those communities go to shreds. I can walk into a community now and tell you whether or not this HOA allows people to rent or whether they have rental restrictions. The ones that look god awful, those ones do not have rental restrictions. The ones that look beautiful, they're well maintained, those ones have rental restrictions because homeowners just care more about it.
Exactly. Which actually ties into maintenance cost, right? Yeah. Because someone else is going to care less about your property than you do.
Exactly.
So yeah. So anyway.
Exactly. And that goes into when we get to that soon about having a good tenant that actually cares for the home and whatnot. And that's my, well, I don't live here, so they just punching holes in the wall. And I got hit with fines and eviction. Like, hopefully I never have to go down that route with anybody. And so that also comes when you're looking at it, get a prime location, but also look at the neighborhoods in that community, figure out which ones can be affordable and which ones actually allow for it. Because this wasn't the first rental property I looked at. Once again, people, you're going to fall down, get knocked down. Shout out to Bull in the Ring, Campbell Middle School football. And so I go to one rental property. Hey man, it's a beautiful community. It's affordable. I want to buy this. And they're like, sorry, you have to live here. You have to be an owner. You can't be an investor owner. And so I'm like, okay, that one's off the list. Another one, beautiful. I was starting out in DeKalb County because that's where Stone Mountain is at. And I was like, I'm going out here. And they're like, no, sorry. No, can't do that here, can't do that here. And for good reason, I understand it. And so I finally get to this one. They don't have rental restrictions, or they have them, but they hadn't been enforced because of HOA board. And I didn't notice when I actually purchased the property, but they actually allowed me to rent. Once again, I have that good rapport with the HOA president. I still text her every month, just say, hey, make sure everything's going well. Any complaints, let me know what I can do. Make sure my HOAs are always paid up. Some of my competitors aren't doing, so they're about to get evicted. That's a W. Less competition, more profit. I learned that at Griffin Middle School. I'm trying to tell you, man. And so that was amazing. And now when it comes to the second point, when it comes to, okay, let's actually make sure we have the numbers ran. So I found a property, the one I wanted. Interesting story. Once again, perseverance, people. It's just a theme of life, a theme of my life, your life, everybody's life. It took me 3 times to get this rental property. So I see it with 3. Dr. Thomas, 3. I was getting frustrated. You talk about being on the brink of quitting. I'm just on the brink of, we never having a conversation. And so I see the property. I see it literally, it's the last day that it lists on there. A lot of people are bidding for it. And not just people, even entities, like when we look at the LLCs and limited liability companies. So somebody puts offer in, we get our offer in, actually past the deadline. Me and the realtor, we get it in literally at like 3:05 p.m. The deadline was 3 o'clock on Sunday, because I just found it like 11 a.m. on Sunday. And I was like, man, it probably look amazing and whatnot. And so I'm gonna see when it's a deadline. They're like 3 o'clock today. I just jumped in my car. I drove down to College Park, Georgia. I'm looking at the house like, man, this is a good community. It's by a school, which is, it's in the books. I read, if you want to buy a good property, not just location, but buy it close to a school, because once again, that's probably parents and families, and they want their communities to be looking very well. Like school zones, they actually have very good security as well, because you never want an incident around kids and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Like, man, and it close 75, 85, 285, perfect. And so I call my realtor, say, hey, emergency, I don't know what you're doing. If you could drop in and put in this order and see if we can, this offer, and see if we can actually get this property. And that was actually a second time. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know. So I want to tease out this point, right? In order to be able just to drop in and to put in an offer on a house, you already have to have the capacity and the positioning to do that. That means that your credit score is where it needs to be.
Yes.
Right? That you have earnest money set aside, ready to roll, that you have down payment money set aside, ready to roll, depending on what percentage that you're going to put down on the type of loan that you're going to get, so on and so forth. So this isn't just something where you just ultimately decided that, hey, I'm going to jump into this, but you had to have already been prepared. It's like stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? Because if something comes up, the last thing you want to do is be fumbling around on the finance side, the credit score side, and also your debt to income ratio side of actually being able to be approved and being able to close on a property, because the market is hot right now and there's a lot of competition. So if you're not ready and you're fumbling around, you'll miss out on an opportunity.
Exactly. And that's the part I left out when I was talking about watching the different interviews, going to the We Buy Black convention, reading the articles, reading the book. At that point, because the books bring it up, like actually, because that's a big question a lot of people have, like, how much do they need for down payment? It depends on what they want to buy. So at that point, I just cut all excess spending. And that goes back to remember the story from childhood. I want the video game for $5. I'm like, okay, what is that? That's 13 weeks. What is it? It's about 3 months? Okay. I cut all spending for 3 months. We just sitting there saving. And as time goes on, I'm going to properties. No, you can't buy here. Okay, just keep saving and saving. And so that's what I was saying about the property. That was actually the second one I was describing, like submitting an offer at 3:05, but the deadline was 3 o'clock. Because the first time I found it, when I actually wanted it the first time, it was already under contract. They were going to close. I told my real estate, she said, I'll put in a good word for you just in case something happens. And something did happen. They backed out of it. They walked away from the closing table. So, okay, second time around, it's back on the market. Let's get it. We put in an offer. We're going with somebody else. Okay. Well, second time, that's an L. And then the third time around, that person walked away after 2 days, said, we don't want it anymore. So we put in a third offer. You send me a counter offer. I send one back. They don't respond. I'm like, all right, whatever. All right, on to the next one. Like, it happens. People, it happens. And then they call me like after the deadline, because they're supposed to give us an answer by maybe that Sunday. They didn't reach out to me or my real estate agent. And then they turned around and say, you know what? Wednesday, this is 3 days after deadline. Hey, congratulations. We accept your offer. Okay, perfect. So please read a book about negotiating. And so to bring all that home to the number, so I'm saving, so I know.
So Jerome, quick question. Did that give you pause to know that there were 2 potential buyers?
Oh, yeah.
That walked away, and now you're starting to think, do I really want this property? It's like if you're trying to date somebody, and you see like, all right, you keep, and everybody keep leaving, and you go like, do I really want to?
Exactly. And that's what your viewers see. So there are certain steps to buying a property. Like once again, not just, hey, here's a down payment, here's my mortgage, go on, be crazy. There's certain things you have to do. Like definitely you don't have to get a home inspection, but you have to get a home inspection.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So I actually got 2 home inspections. I had the normal walk through to test to make sure none of the pipes are leaking and make sure, you know, the light switch worked. I actually had the individual do infrared because supposedly there were termites in the home. And that's why the individual had walked away. And so I actually had the home inspector do infrared inspection where they can actually look into the walls and see if there's any moisture and whatnot, and see if there's any termites in there and causing termite damage. Because that's the case, pretty much don't buy the home. Like you do not want termite infestation because you don't want your tenant walking or you walking just fall through the floor. And so that was the actual reason for pause. But it passed inspection. We never had a problem with termites the entire time I've owned it, and so on and so forth. And so I get the property, it's accepted. I already have my down payment saved up. And basically it go back to what I said earlier, like figuring out how much you can afford to actually, anybody that wants to get into real estate, how much he or she can afford to actually pay in a mortgage every month. And from there you can figure out your costs. And you can actually go online and actually type in a mortgage amount and it can reverse into the cost. I mean, actual selling price based on what you're going to have for an interest rate. That goes back to what you said about the credit score. You'll know your interest rate.
Zillow is a great place for that, and it's fairly accurate too in terms of what I've seen, at least.
Exactly. I've been going, and even when I was looking at interest rate, and this is me actually formulating like all the numbers and whatnot for the specific property. And so when I was looking at properties, like even in the cab counter, this one, they're all pretty much like in the $60,000 range or whatnot. And so I'm like, okay, like, because there are some communities that they haven't been quote unquote gentrified or whatnot, or the real estate prices haven't really appraised. And you can see a lot of that in the cab county area. And so I'm like, all right, 60,000, okay, 10%, that's $6,000, and that's like figuring out how much I have to do for the down payment. And then people don't realize when you get into real estate, and it's something once again learn from the book, so don't just jump into it. Real estate is, you really can't do 3% or 10% because they're not a primary residence. Individuals have to put down, let's say 15, 20, or 25%, depending on what they're buying. And they have to have substantial cash reserves. So not only do they have to figure out, okay, 60,000, what's 20%? All right, I need 12,000 down payment. Do I have cash reserves like at least, I believe it's like 3, 4, 5 months, depending on which bank you go through, and no more than 6 months worth of cash reserves to actually cover that. And it doesn't have to be all in cash. It could be in a 401k account that counts.
Absolutely.
They want index
We're
funds
talking about collateral.
Yes, exactly.
We're talking, because again, let's unpack this a little bit. Because if a bank is going to make a loan to you, they are taking a risk with the people who bank with the bank, because banks loan the money that we give to the banks. So think about the bank as being someone who's being a custodian of your dollars, that's just not going to let your dollars sit, but is going to invest those dollars to people who are trying to do exactly what Jerome has done. Then you would want for them to do their due diligence to ensure that if they extend this money out, which is collectively everyone's money who's banking with the bank, that that person has the capacity, the collateral, right? The capital, right? The 5 C's of credit, character, and then the conditions and all these different things to not just take on the loan, but the capacity to pay it back.
Exactly. And they also have to understand that when you're actually getting an interest rate or a mortgage rate on a mortgage for rental property, it's going to be higher than whatever the mortgage rate is now. If the mortgage rate is 2.5%, you're going to pay about an additional 1%, 3.5%, depending on how much you put down as well. If you do 25%, you're pretty much going to get an interest rate that's similar to what you would get on a normal home purchase for yourself, which is amazing. Yep. But seeing there's a lot of people, they struggle with the down payment or to worry about capital and cash flow. They'll say, you know, a lot of people do the 15% to 20%. Now in COVID, you pretty much can't do 15% down because the market stalled in a sense.
Significant risk for the banks.
Exactly. Yeah, because me, I actually did 15% down when I first got my rental property, but now it's only 20%. Like virtually you have to do 20%. And understanding also in these more dynamics, it's a lot to the actual numbers up front. Banks will only give a mortgage that's at a certain minimum. Like banks will not give, a lot of banks won't give a mortgage less than $60,000. Some smaller banks won't give a mortgage less than $75,000, and that impacts what you can and cannot buy. Some people say, man, $20,000 for rental property, I can get that, I can fix it myself. Okay, that's going to be $20,000 cash. No bank's going to wait 30 years to get $20,000 plus interest, which is about $40,000. I didn't understand that. Exactly. I didn't understand that before I started researching. Keyword researching, not buying real estate, researching real estate. And once I was doing research, once again, it's a lot easier to learn that lesson via researching versus buying it than saying, okay, yo, it's 20 grand. No, I'm gonna get a mortgage for it. You get a mortgage on $20,000. Now it's a disaster situation. Everybody's upset. So once again, during the research, And so fast forward a little bit. So like we understand the mechanics of it. So all right, so virtually banks are not going to give you a mortgage. Most banks are not going to give you a mortgage less than $50,000. Okay, so 50,000, that's going to be my base. What's my price? Okay, so I had to actually figure out in my head the exact price. So 50,000 divided by, if I was doing 50%, like 0.85, that's the lowest selling price I can really go. I couldn't go because they're going to require 15%. So I can't go 55,000 because that 5,000 is 50%. So I can't buy the home. And I had that understanding, so I wasn't upset. I wasn't frustrated. Some individuals like, I put down 5,000. That's not 15%. Well, I can't put down more than 5,000 because now it'll be under 50,000. So I can't get the mortgage.
Yes, 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 yes.
That's where the
Because
research comes.
that's the loan amount. So let's kind of clarify, right? So
Yeah.
the more you put down, it lowers the actual loan amount that you're purchasing the home for. And if a bank is not going to secure a loan less than a certain amount, then actually your down payment so it actually forces you to buy up.
Yes.
Literally. And so you're right. There is that math component that goes into this.
Yes, and individuals have to understand that. And even if they can't do these numbers, they can easily, like their online resources, their individuals such yourself, they can actually contact and work with you on that matter. And so that's one portion. Also, so like we have the understanding. So if the house is 55,000, you have to put down 15%. That's going to drive your loan amount below 50,000, so you can't buy the home. So really, it came out to about like let's say 59,000. So 59,000, you put down 9,000, you've covered your percentage requirement for 15%. You get your $50,000 loan, you're on and running. Here's another problem. They being the banks, they're not going to give you a mortgage for more than what the home is worth.
Yep.
So let's say the home 59,000. Hey, that's perfect. I want to put down 9. I want to get my $50,000 mortgage. Okay, that home only appraises for $40,000. You can't buy the home unless you're ready to pay $59,000 for something that's only worth $49,000. I mean $40,000. You can't buy the home.
Down.
Exactly. And so when it comes to that, so also had on the back end after running all the numbers, made sure the math worked with the selling price. It's also okay. What is the home going to appraise for? And once again, there are different tools. I would not recommend getting your own appraiser. For anybody that knows, if you ever get a mortgage, the bank has to choose your appraiser because obviously, I get my own appraiser, it's going to appraise for $1 million because that's what I'm going to say. Hey, it's $2 million.
If the bank gets their appraiser, right? Like
Yeah.
there's always a power.
Yeah. Yeah, they had the power, they had the capital. And so on that one, when I actually look at it, I wouldn't recommend getting an appraiser. They can actually, like I said, Zillow, they can go on Google and they can actually look at real estate values. They can get actually, and I was looking at this as well in the community I actually invested in. I was actually looking at what the other units were selling for,
Yes.
as well as some, and that's all they're going to do as well. They have a lot more complex formula, but it's called comps, which are a comparison. So if the last 3 homes and they're a similar size sold for, let's say 70,000, then they're going to assume for my home is worth 70,000. That's pretty much how they do it. And they look at areas and they look at recent comps and recent sales and whatnot. So individuals, they can do a similar analysis. So I was confident it's going to appraise for more than what's worth, which it did. So that was perfect on that one. And so that's actually, okay, we figured out down payment, mortgage. Okay, that's your mortgage. Let's say it was 59,000, cool. Pay 9,000 down, $50,000 mortgage. Here's the other portion of running the numbers. What is going to be the monthly mortgage payment?
Boom. So question for you. Did you already work out what you can afford as a monthly mortgage payment in the event that something did not go well? So let's say in the event that I can't get a tenant, this is the most that I can afford, and then kind of work backwards into how much home I could afford.
Yes.
All right, boom.
Yes, and so I'd already worked out, mind you, and this is part of because it kind of feeds into the real estate story here. But this actually isn't the first real estate property I purchased. There's actually a parcel of land out in DeKalb County that I actually purchased before this. I believe I texted you about taking out a personal loan for like $15,000, and it had that 13.74% interest rate, which is telling everybody don't do it. Do not just walk blindly into that. Like that interest rate, that means I was paying about $515.09. I remember that. That was like good punch. Wow. But $515 a month. And in part of my preparation, there's a logical reason to do it. One, it was land, and land, it never really goes down in value, so to speak, because land is a finite resource.
Yeah.
And so I bought it just to get over my fear of being in debt. Because mind you, at this point, before I purchased my home, I was actually debt free, paid everything. And so it's like, all right, get out of the fear of taking risks. And so I bought this, all right, $500 a month for 3 years, whatnot. I already paid that off earlier than that, which was super dope. And so I actually had factored that in, factored my normal living expenses, and that margin that I was seeing, I was like, you know what? I can actually use that to go get this rental property. And I had plans to actually pay off that land anyway, which I did. And so that was cool on that one. And so, yes, I ran that number 4 to actually determine how much more I paid. So I'm like, okay, so you got your down payment amount. Mind you, everybody did beforehand, before I actually went out and actually started purchasing properties. This has to be done beforehand. If not, you're going bankrupt.
Well, this is the thing. Winning with money happens before the fact at every stage of the process. Most people are in this process of they do something, then they figure out how to make it work. No, that's not how you win with money. It's investing, it's real estate, it's your spending plan, budget, whatever it may be. You figure out where you want to go first, and then you figure out how to make it work. Then you actually kind of can test it out a little bit to say, hey, does this work for us? Right? So one of the things that my wife and I will do is that we'll do a before the fact type thing, right? So we'll say, all right, we want to do this thing. We'll create our spending plan. We'll take that cash flow out of our budget. And for a month or maybe 2 months, if we choose to do that, we'll say, all right, how do we feel by not having this additional cash flow if we invest in this thing? And we'll set that into a kitty to say that that money will go towards that goal if we decide to use it towards that goal. But we want to live it before we live it. And that's really what I'm getting at. You want to live it before you live it. Because once you live it, you're stuck in it.
Yeah, it's a 30-year agreement. It's a 30-year agreement.
The consequences and weight of being in something where you have a 30-year or whatever, 20-year mortgage can feel really, really heavy. So anyway.
Exactly. It's like once you sign that dotted line, you're into it until you either paid off, foreclosed, bankruptcy, or you sell it to somebody else. So yes, it's like you're in it. So it's a lot easier to learn these lessons beforehand. I can't tell you how many hours I spent making amortization schedules. This is on top of reading the books and doing the article readings, as well as doing the interview, like watching interviews online, as well as going to We Buy Black Women, like just making amortization schedules, like just constantly. And what amortization schedule is, you take your loan amount, and it shows how much is principal and how much is interest. So when you do a mortgage payment, and to everybody, it's the same amount, but it's not applied the same at your bank.
Yes.
So a portion of it goes to principal. That decreases to $50,000 in this situation. A portion of it is interest, and that portion just goes in the bank's pocket. That's called revenue for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, like, if you don't understand what an amortization schedule is, do not jump into real estate. You need to have a firm understanding. Once again, I have a background in accounting, and I actually studied accounting in college, and I remember making amortization schedules. Yes. So I make them all the time just for this very reason.
Transferable skill.
Exactly. And so it all comes back to math.
So to your point, though, you worked the calculations, you understood what your margins were, you got comfortable with those margins based on engaging in another real estate situation. So you actually you built your capacity to engage in, I'm not going to say riskier, but to engage in more real estate transactions over time. Yeah. All right. So it wasn't you just did it, just jumping in, taking a blind leap of faith. You knew where you were in terms of your perceptions about debt. So you did something to navigate that process, to allow yourself to get comfortable with it. Like we talked about earlier, get over the hump, and then realize, all right, by engaging this process, debt isn't inherently bad as long as I'm thinking ahead of the fact, being mindful of what cash flow I have and whether or not I can meet those needs. And then once you've gotten over the hump, now guess what? You own a property.
Exactly. And that's what it was with the land. Like, once again, I never encourage anybody to take out a loan with an interest rate of 3.74%. Exactly. But I worked all the numbers beforehand. Yeah. So I showed up to the actual closing, it wasn't close. I actually showed up to the place where I actually got a personal loan from, and I was able to tell them my number, and they came back with a different number. And I'm like, your number doesn't match my number. Your number's wrong. And then they came back, oh, no, there's like a loan servicing fee of like $180 that built in there as well. So I redid it. Their number was off by 3 cents a month. It really didn't matter. Okay. And so definitely, that's what people need to have. They need to know these numbers before they go into it.
In other words, Jerome, they need to hire you to run the numbers. Like, Jerome, I'm being very honest here in terms of thinking about entrepreneurship. Because again, my whole point of having this conversation was to unpack these nuances that we don't really unpack when you engage in a thing. Everybody just wants to talk about the big picture, not the work that goes into making this successful. You just don't buy a property and boom, you're winning. There's so much prep work that goes into this. And I'll be honest with you, if you want to charge an hourly fee to help people assess based on their financial situation. And I know I'm giving game away right now. I always do that for free. To assess their situation, their capacity, to determine what would be the sweet spot for them in terms of what type of property that they can take on to have the sufficient margin in the event that something doesn't go well or whatever it may be. Like, that's huge. I would pay you $500 for you to do that for me. Before, I would rather do that, right, than to get into something and then to live a horrible experience.
Exactly.
I would rather pay $500 on the front end and say, all right, I think I'm ready to close on this, but I want somebody else to double check my numbers for me to make sure that they're good. And I would rather come out of pocket these $500 than to be stuck into something that I'm going to lose thousands and thousands of dollars on because it's just a good deal.
Exactly.
There's more to this, y'all, than just getting the property. You got to do the math. You got to work the numbers. They got to make sense.
Yeah, and when we say work the numbers, just to be clear, it's not double check. I've run those numbers 100 times at least. And this is everything, not just the mortgage, not just the insurance, not just the property taxes, not just the rental revenue, the rental income that I could generate. And I'll get into that in a second. But those numbers have to be ran, in my opinion, at least 100 times. Because imagine just doing a mortgage calculation. What about the HOA fees? Do they charge HOAs? Has anybody done research to ask if that neighborhood is going to charge HOAs? How did they actually figure out the property taxes? And good news for all the listeners, this is public information. For us, it's FultonCounty.gov, where I can go in there and actually put in the parcel ID number. So every piece of real estate has a specific parcel ID number. No point in memorizing it. It's about 14, 15 numbers, maybe some letters thrown in there. Mm-hmm. And you can go to their actual website. So if it's in Fulton County, FultonCounty.gov, and you go through property taxes and you can put in the parcel ID number. Well, we don't know what the parcel ID number is. If you know the address, you can actually put it into that website and reverse engineer into the parcel ID. And you can look at the property tax bills for the past 10 years.
Absolutely.
You could take an average, you could take the most recent 3 years and figure out how much you're going to pay per month in property taxes. So that's a part of your mortgage. If you ever had a mortgage and it says a portion that says escrow, that what goes in what's termed as escrow. Your mortgage, your homeowner's insurance. You can get homeowner's insurance quote. Literally just call different homeowner or different insurance companies and give them the property address. Say you're thinking about buying this property, and they will furnish you a quote. They will email you quotes. They will call you.
So what you're getting at here is the overall cost of home ownership. Because so earlier you were talking about the amortization schedule. We're looking at the principal and the interest that we're going to be charged based on the interest rate we're getting from the bank. All right. And then from there we have taxes and insurance, which if you're accounting person PITI or PITI, right, which is additional costs that you bear from home ownership. So when you're thinking about this, you can't just think about just principal and interest. Then we have to think about taxes and insurance. And I would imagine, I don't own any rental properties right now, but I would imagine insurance might be a little bit higher if I'm thinking about risk from a risk assessment standpoint. If you own a property and you have tenants, I would think that the interest, the insurance premium may be a little bit higher to insure that home than if it were your primary residence. Is that accurate?
In some ways it varies depending on the vendor. So to give you a straight answer, in some cases it can be lower because remember, when I have my own home, my personal property is insured. But when it comes to a rental property, I just have to actually insure the home itself. The personal property component is not in there. And that's one of the great nuances to come out of it. So people actually could be paying lower insurance on their rental property.
Good to know.
Yeah, and from that, your tenant is responsible for getting renter's insurance. You can just write that in your lease agreement. And that renter's insurance will insure their personal property against any unforeseen damages, which none of us think are going to happen, but they're going to happen apparently. You see where we're going later, but it's going to happen apparently. And so from there is yes. At this point I was talking about our fixed costs, the cost you're going to have every month, regardless if you have a tenant or not. Your mortgage, principal and interest, HOA fees, monthly HOA fees, whether or not you have them. You can get monthly HOA fees by looking at other properties that are selling in your area. You can call the HOA president or the HOA itself, and they'll tell you, yes, we have HOA fees, and here how much they are a month. That's not hard to find. Your insurance rate, if you call the different companies or you're going to use the different tools online, they'll give you the average homeowner's insurance rate for that zip code divided by 12. That's your additional amount. And then say the property tax divided by 12. Now you have your fixed cost. You know how much cash flow is going out the door every month in relation to this property.
Yes.
No confusion.
Within ballpark range, right?
Exactly. And you get really close. Like mine was off by like a few dollars. Like you can get like literally like $10, $15, $20. You can get really close.
That's really good.
Yeah, you can do really close if you put the numbers in there. If people just do the research and put the time in, No degree required. You could consult a professional. I recommend it. Once again, and even if it's not face-to-face conversation, just reading all these books and articles and interviews, but people can figure out their concrete number. And then the last most important one is where people draw the ball too. How much revenue are they going to get, like actual rental? And you go on something like rent.com and don't just look at what homes are renting for. Look at something similar, because a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom home, like standalone house, is going to rent for more than a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom townhouse or condo, because the home comes with a front yard and a backyard.
Yeah.
And in the same breath, that home actually is probably not going to have an HOA, or the HOA is be significantly lower for a house versus a townhouse or a condo. And so individuals have to go on rent.com. They have to look at what kind of structure to buy. And let's say it's a condo, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. Let's look and see what the other condos are written for in our zip code. Or they could just, I actually look at the apartment rates, because that's going to feed into it too. Because somebody might say, okay, I'm renting this apartment for 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. I'm paying, let's say, $1,300 a month, but I can go rent this townhouse that's 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, and because it's so cheap, it's much smaller, they can actually rent it for $1,100. They're gonna take that deal.
Yeah.
And so they have to be cognizant of what's being rented for what in the actual area. And they go on rent.com and other websites as well. But
That's called fair market value.
yes.
What a lot of people get caught up into is what I found when I engage with people in this space is that when they enter into real estate or any entrepreneurial endeavor, there's a purpose, there's a reason, right? It could be to make up cash flow needs for other decisions. Like there's a reason, there's a logic. So when people think that, oh, if I get this property, I need to sell it for X, because a lot of times we're trying to make up for some other things. And it kind of makes it a dire situation. And then, but if we lock in on that number, we're thinking about what we need and not necessarily what the market is going to dictate in terms of engaging in this process. So I understand why people go in and say, all right, this property should at least sell or rent for like $1,700. All the effort and work that I put in it, which is called the endowment effect. We do it with our home property, like a house you lived in. We attribute more value to it.
Yes.
Market will. So psychologically, we're thinking that, oh, we can at least get X. That's a very dangerous game to play, because that's a subjective notion of value. It's not objective. And when we think that we can get more, we're more likely to take on more debt. Right? Exactly. So if you work this after the fact, what happens is I took on more debt because I thought I can charge more. But when I get into the market's saying, no, $1,200. And now we don't have the margins that we need to make this work. But you shouldn't know that after the fact.
Exactly.
Your point, Jerome, you need to know that before the fact and be very objective in this process and not be all up in your emotions.
Exactly. This is one big math problem, which is why, back to my childhood, always loved math, which is why I picked real estate for the passive income. It's one big math problem. If individuals just at a high level summary, if they can find out how much the rent goes for in their zip code, they can calculate their fixed mortgage, they can estimate maintenance, and if they're a handyman, a lot of those charges will be significantly less. I just figured out what they have to do every year to keep the upkeep with a home. Once again, it'll be in the books that we're going to reference. You can also do Google research, or if you already own a home, or even if you rent, you understand those charges and whatnot, like changing air filters. You can do that yourself for relatively $0, minus the cost of actually just buying the air filter. And so individuals, they understand this all on the front end. They will be fine. And one of the books that we'll reference are actually going to read. And the person actually says in there, like, difference between people that succeed and fail is really on the front end and with the math and the numbers. Like, some people just go in here blindly. If people don't have excess earnings, they're looking for real estate to make up for that gap in cash flow, that's not the way to approach it. This should be done when people have additional cash flow. And they can get to that point by either increasing their income or just cutting out so many frivolous expenses, which, once again, from my childhood, man, she bred it just, all right, we're just going to sacrifice now and we'll exceed later.
Okay. So I want to transition, because I know we talked a good bit about a lot of different things, which I think are kind of topical, big picture type things. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty details, because I think that in that particular instance, we need to really be sitting down with the professional and thinking about properties specifically and things of that nature to work out the numbers. But to your point, doing the math, doing the research, spending plenty of time doing that, having cash flow, like all of these things, like location, all of these things that you're talking about are actually pretty standard in terms of what I tend to know about this process. So one thing I want to touch on really quickly before we wrap up here with this is, again, I want to come back to this whole point of relationship with tenant and service to tenant. You had a saying that I thought is so incredibly important. And if nothing else, of everything that we've talked about, and again, we're going to include links and resources like books and resources where people can go and look at this stuff more in depth. But this is the one piece that I don't think we talk about enough as it relates to real estate, and that's relationship with tenant. You talked about this earlier, but you said be as eager to do repairs and be there for your tenant as you are to collect rent. Explain.
Yeah. Okay, so what I noticed with so many different landlords, when it's time to collect that rent, is doing the first, hey, Doc Thompson's the first. Where the rent at? Where we at? Hey, it's midnight on the first. It's, man, we ain't even up yet. Why are you screaming? Like, where's the rent money? It didn't hit yet. It's only 2 o'clock. Trust me, it'll hit your bank by 5 o'clock. Everything will be fine. And so that's how a lot of landlords operate. Once again, they just see it as a property. But when tenants have complaints.
Quick question. Where's the rent money? So would you say that individuals who go into this and they're anxious and worried about the rent money on day one are more than likely the type of landlords that may not have the capacity to actually withstand financial shock in the event that something happens? Because to my way of thinking is like, if you have the financial capacity to engage in this process, you're not worried whether or not the rent comes exactly on the first of the month, because you're probably going to give them a grace period. And if you have a good rapport with your tenant, you know that they're going to pay at some point. But would you say that people who are that type of worried are probably potentially in over their head and more susceptible to financial shock?
Absolutely. I would definitely say it. Because, and here's the crazy thing about it. So with my setup, and this is how all landlords should do it, they should actually pay the mortgage before they actually collect the rent money, because the mortgage is due on the first and whatnot. So the same way as a landlord, the rent's due on the first, the mortgage also due on the first. And what landlords want to do, they want to synchronize them and actually make sure they come out at the same time. So you just have the net gain versus the cash flow come out.
Yes.
And then they get the money on the back end.
So you want to get off the head, sort of thing. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly. And so individuals, like how we talked about certain landlords during COVID-19, they're struggling right now. They're actually in the process of actually going through foreclosures and bankruptcy because they've over leveraged. They have way more mortgages than they can afford to cover themselves. Those individuals are in those situations. Whereas the way I set it up with this one, actually running the numbers 100 times over again, it's fine. Like, it was doing the third, it's 10th, so I've been paid. But here's the crazy thing about mortgages. Most mortgage lenders don't charge a late fee until the 15th of the month.
Yeah.
I've already paid that mortgage. I have the substantial cash flow savings and whatnot, just from not being overly eager to spend the additional passive income. That's not the intent of it for myself personally. So with that situation, like, it's perfectly fine. Like, once again, we have that good rapport. I'll probably contact her on 15th pay. Can you send me the rent? She'll send it. Life will go on as usual.
Got you.
And so what I'm talking about, when you see landlords that are like, hey, okay, it's first. Where's the rent at? Where's the rent at? I've seen that, and I've seen those same landlords. What about a hot water heater, or it's the water heater? I'm sorry. The water heater is broken. It's not functioning. The air conditioner don't work. Now it's taking them 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days to text back. Yes. Hey, we have a situation with the plumbing. Like, hey, we have a leak. Man, I don't know. Call a plumber. Do what you can. Like, I have people who are tenants who don't even know how to get in contact. And I mean, like, not people that are actually my tenant, but people that I live around, because I live in a condominium. Some of them are renters. They don't even know how to get in contact with their landlord. They get in contact with the property manager, but the actual landlord, the person that owns the property, they don't know how to get in contact with him or her, which is asinine. My tenant has my personal cell phone number, email address, not the home address, because they don't even know where I live. I don't need that in my life. But definitely, like, they have the phone number and whatnot. Like, just text and call me, and maybe we'll get into that story later, like, where it actually came in very handy having that rapport and having my information. And my tenant even tell you, like, oh, something break, he's going to be down there.
So which actually is a great segue, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is willing to be there in the event that something breaks, as you are to collect that check at the beginning. So recently, this is what prompted this whole conversation. You texted me because you've been keeping me in the loop on your process and your progress. So everything that we've been talking about, you've navigated the space, you finally get into it, you do it right at the beginning of the pandemic, you're navigating that. And then ultimately you hit me up with this text that says the entire first floor of my rental property had flooded. Right. So we got back to this philosophy that you had on be as quick to serve your client as you are to collect that check. Now that was put to the test. Tell me how you navigated this process.
It's a long story. I'll try to keep it a good
Got me on
summary.
the spot, obviously.
Definitely hit the summary. December 17th, 2020. Remember, it's like it was yesterday. When the levees broke, College Park, Georgia edition. If you're from New Orleans, Louisiana, I love you. I fully support you. I hope the video doesn't get flagged because of that. But seriously, so the situation was, it's a Friday night. It's around 10 o'clock. My phone is always on and whatnot. And so my tenant texts me like, hey, the toilet downstairs is overflowing. And I'm like, all right, just turn the toilet off. It probably clogged. I could be out there tomorrow to look at it. I'm thinking it's there's a wax seal on the bottom of the toilet, but it's coming up through the top, not the bottom. And so what I'm thinking is, okay, the wax seal on the bottom of the toilet is actually worn away, so I can just change the wax seal. Go Lowe's, Home Depot, $5. I'll change it in the morning. That's 10 o'clock at night. 2 a.m. in the morning. It's Saturday. Okay, I woke up, I turned the water off, but I came back downstairs, and now the water's even coming out even more. So this is 2 a.m. Saturday. I'm on the phone with plumbers, 24-hour plumbers, like, hey, look, I got a situation with my rental property. Here's the address. I need y'all to get down there. I'm going to be down there. And so I told her to turn the water off, do what she can at maintenance. Then she goes to sleep. She wakes up in the morning. Rush. Turns out she used flushable wet wipes. And flushable wet wipes, people, they're flushable, but they're like paper towels.
Yeah.
You can flush them, but they're not going to break down and dissolve and actually clog up. Anybody that actually had kids understand that flushable wet wipes aren't flushable. And so it actually clogged up the pipes. And so that's why they had the overflow come back through the toilet. And so she wake up in the morning, like it actually came out the downstairs bathroom, down the hallway, into the garage, into the living room, into the kitchen. Miraculously, it missed all her personal possessions, which was awesome. And so I'm down there, and literally I wake up Saturday, I see that text. She sent me pictures, man. I'm on site. The plumbing company, they're down there with their plumbers, also down there with like one of the field
That's the
supervisors.
beautiful thing though. Like, I know this thing happened, but
Yeah.
to the point, being as eager and quick to provide a service to your tenant just as much as you are to be able to collect a check is, I think, something that's missing in this conversation. You just said that not only did she have access to you immediately when something happened, she was able to text you. You were able to communicate some, I think, effective and clear things to do to potentially address the situation. You immediately reached out to plumbers, 24-hour plumbers, to assess it. You just didn't leave it up to them to go down and do everything. You made the time to go down and be there yourself. That's what I'm getting at. When we talk about passive income, like, yes, there's passive income that you make from this process, but everything we've talked about through this process required hours of preparation, right? And then ongoing maintenance along the way, which is a time allocation, not as significant as maybe your main 40 hours a week or whatever it may be, but being involved, being there to serve your tenants, and having a greater commitment to this process than just collecting dollars. And that's where my frustration comes when we talk about money, is that all we're talking about nowadays is just how can I get the bag?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I get getting the bag. That's okay. But if we lose community, if we lose connection,
Empathy.
If we lose empathy and compassion in this process, forget the bag. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want to be wealthy if that means that being wealthy means that I'm in everything that I do only to optimize my gain at the detriment of someone else, right? If that's what Wall Street looks like, I don't want to reinvent Wall Street as a Black community. I don't. Like, I don't want a Black Wall Street. If it looks identical to the way that we think about Wall Street, we need to create something different, because community is really the stunt, and actually being there and serving community. So I just wanted to kind of unpack that a little bit, because I really value not just the fact that you were trying to earn passive income, but then you also brought up themes of, I want to have a greater impact in my community. I want to see dollars circulate in my community. And then also, because of that, not only do I want to see dollars circulate in my community, I want to be the type of landlord that I would want to have.
Yes.
And that's such a beautiful way of thinking about entrepreneurship, thinking about doing what's right and what's best for others, because I think that we can create win-win scenarios. And what you're speaking on is how I would want for someone to engage in this process if they were wanting to get into real estate. Not just do I want to make money, how can I impact my community? And then how can I also be of service to the person who is dependent upon me as their landlord? And I just want to commend you for that.
All right, definitely. Thank you on that one. And that's what it comes back to another famous quote. Well, not famous, but just another quote I have that I came up with. Like, I don't allow my tenants to live in any environment that I wouldn't live in myself.
Ooh.
And once again, it goes back to the research on beforehand. I knew this could possibly happen because it's just life. Life happens. And so because I did the research beforehand, I was able to consciously make that decision that I accept these risks and bear this responsibility.
Yes.
Versus some individuals that just jump in, they
That's
would just
when I say own it, that's exactly what I mean. It's like when you engage in a process, you need to own it, period. Own it. And the only way you can own it is by doing the research, understanding the responsibility and the consequences, and you saying, do I own it? Because if you own it, you will take care of it.
Exactly. And so people just need that research, just even for themselves, not just to be good at their craft, just so they can make a conscious and say, you know what, this isn't for me. And there's certain areas of real estate that's not for me, like flipping homes. I'm not trying to do that much or that many type of repairs and flip homes and resell them. It's just not my thing. It's more so rental properties. But so I called the plumbers, they're on their way. I'm on my way. And when I say I'm on my way, people, I'm grabbing everything. I'm grabbing sponges, I'm grabbing paper towels. Obviously, this isn't going to work. I got my mop. I got a bucket, man. I'm heading down there with everything. Like, this a little cleanup. I get down there, I look at all this water, man. What was I thinking? This ain't going to work. Why do I have plastic gloves? These aren't going to help me right now. It's sewer water. And so I meet with the plumber. They explain what happened, and it's crazy. It pretty much, if you want to look how much tissue it was, like take a tissue out of a tissue box. Like, that's how much it actually clogged it up and whatnot. So the plumber comes down there. They actually unclog it in about 5 minutes. Pay like $400 for that. This is where it hits on the back end. And so because it's sewer water, like, this is like real sewer water that came back up.
Yes.
The whole place has to be sanitized because this is now a hazmat issue. Like, this is unsafe. Like, people cannot live in that home and breathe that type of air without dying. Like, it will kill them. It's poisonous at this point. Like, the tenant had to actually live in a hotel for like a couple of days or whatever while they actually sanitized the place. Took up the tile flooring, my beautiful tile flooring, cut into the drywall 24 inches. Had to take everything out of the kitchen, the living room, and the bathroom and put it in the garage. No, this was deep. I got over 200 pictures of this. Like, it was real. This ain't like, oh no, he's that. No, this was real. And so they filed and this is the real twist. This really tests the first ring. So they filed a complaint with where they filed a claim with my insurance at the time and whatnot. Yeah. And so I actually go and call various contractors while they're like just chopping up my floors and cutting into the drywall, and I'm just sitting there sad and whatnot. I just go ahead and call the contractors, let them know, because all the plumbers they're gonna come through and sanitize and do the demolition, and then I'm gonna have contractors on the back end that who are actually going to actually put my place back together and repair it and fix like the door seals and everything, put everything back there, make it look pretty again. And so all this is supposed to be covered by insurance. It's just typical water damage coverage. And so, mind you, we're on Saturday, they filed the claim, but I'm not gonna get talked to the claim specialist until Monday. And so Sunday goes by, they take the day off, cool. They've already started cutting stuff, bringing in the fans and whatnot. Monday morning, I called the insurance claim specialist and whatnot. Actually, he called me, left a message. I called back. I'm sitting in the conference room, climax of the story here. And so I'm sitting there like, hey, this is Jerome. You know, we had like a soft tissue overflow, man. The water came back through, ran down through the hallway. My drywalls have been cut. My place looks like a skeleton haunted house. I don't know what's going on here. And they're like, oh, yeah, Mr. Singleton, I was reading through your policy. Turns out you don't have basic water coverage. Oh, I'm sorry, what?
Whoa.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry. I think something just went out. Did I hear that correct? What you say? Yeah, you don't have basic water coverage. And then I read through the policy myself, and I'm actually looking. It's called perils, and that's what's actually covered by your insurance. And so the perils are like fire is a certain code, water is another code. He was right. So I called my homeowner's insurance agent, the one I work with, the one who I specifically instructed during the actual buying process, to actually get the same homeowners covered that's on my primary residence as my rental property.
Yes.
And it was just an oversight on her part. Like, 'cause my primary residence has water damage coverage. Rental property, Dr. Thomas, Not so much. I was like, woo. Talk about gut punch. Y'all want to talk about test resilience, fear? Like if 30 years from now, I'm some big time real estate guru, I'm going to reference this interview and this story. This is the one that literally I thought in this moment, this is going to make or break me. And I'm going to put some numbers by it. And we're being vulnerable and being honest. Demolition total amount out of pocket invoice that I got from this plumbing company, $17,691.13. Bruh, Dr. Thomas. Woo. Hey, you ever had an experience where you were so afraid you actually stopped breathing and you only realized that you stopped breathing because you felt that emptiness in your chest? Woo. That was me, Dr. Thomas. I had to take a second. I'm like, Jerome, am I breathing right now? I don't think I'm breathing. Like, woo. That's just the demolition. Another 12,000 to do the reconstruction and actually fix the drywall. They had to put new drywall down, mud it, sand it, all that stuff, paint, put the new tile flooring down. I had to get a new cabinet base for this kitchen sink. And so altogether, that's about 30 grand out of pocket. Benefits of reading that landlord book that I referenced, that's going to be in the link. Because all of this is a tax write-off, I did get like a incentive of about like a tax benefit like 10, so it netted out to about $20,000 out of pocket. Either way, still phenomenal amount, like, oh, gut punch. And just to put a happy ending on this, I did pay all these people, everybody's been paid, it's over. I don't have to relive that trauma after this interview. But yeah, I was like, oh, just gut punch.
I mean, but that is a real thing, right?
Yes.
Trust but verify.
Yes.
So it's important, even though if you're working with a professional, to take the time and energy to carefully review documents. Now, granted, you might not catch everything, but to at least give yourself the opportunity to do that. But let's step this back though. The only reason you were able to address this situation was, one, you had cash reserves.
Yes.
And that's because you've been intentional about living beneath your means, saving resources. So some people, when they engage in real estate, when they get paid, they pay what they need to pay for their mortgage, but then that other money is just blow money. It's gone, right? There is no reserve really set up to address a water heater issue, to address an HVAC issue, to address a water issue or flooding or any damage that's done to the home. So it's one of those things where the basic notions of financial literacy in terms of having an emergency fund or a reserve of some sort applies in business, applies in real estate, applies in any aspect of life, because you still have to have sufficient cash flow on hand in the event that something happens. A tenant doesn't pay. You have the cash flow or the reserve on hand to be able to address the situation and not be incredibly stressed out. Because if you aren't prepared, if you haven't done all your work on the front end, if you didn't understand the tax code to be able to say, well, how much of this can I write off and all these different things, then imagine a type of stress and anxiety that one could have engaging in this process. And let's say that you weren't the type of landlord where your tenant had access to you, right? Like it could have been even worse of a situation than what it actually turned out to be. But I'm glad that you navigated that.
Yeah, like, man, that was the ultimate test of mathematics. People don't understand. I'm like a beast with math. Like anything before trigonometry and pre-calculus, so pretty much algebra, I'm a beast with that because literally I'm just sitting there. I'm going over my cash flow, which I already understood, and what it was to pay back the amount, because I didn't have like 30 grand to just kick out the window. But what it was, like, one, it was in December, because this was right around Christmas time. Once again, it started on December 17th. It completed everything late January, whatnot, early February. And so I know tax season is right around the corner, so I'll be able to get a lot of this back to actually cover these expenses and won't have to wait. Versus if it happened in June of 2020, I'd have to wait till like February, March of 2021 to get that tax benefit and reclaim that and everything. So just understanding that. And it's still a benefit for later because it pushed me so far into the red. And anybody that reads the tax code, net operating loss carry forward, if you lose more than 25, anything over 25,000, you can actually carry that forward. And I have like this huge tax credit coming along as well for in 2021's to return, which is amazing. And so what I'm seeing is the first thing I go into go mode. So I'm like, okay, what's the first thing? And this goes back to Legend of Zelda. This goes back to my infatuation with math. Think forward. Think to the next step. Where do we want to be? Or in this case, where I don't want to be bankrupt. I don't want to foreclose. I did not set up an LLC. I made a conscious decision not to set up an LLC. So all my personal assets are at risk. So if
Yeah.
They actually seize the home, the bank, and sell it. Whatever they're short, they can actually seize my personal assets.
So
Is what I like.
why didn't you set up an LLC and put the property under that to provide some added protection?
One of the books that I referenced, like actually the author speaks about it, like people get LLC because our LLC really limited liability companies. Like, do they really limit liabilities? There's certain aspects that would not be covered in a limited liability situation. Let's say I had an LLC and I didn't get this fixed in a timely manner. The home's now unlivable. I have two individuals breathing in fumes that could literally kill them. It doesn't matter if I have a C corporation, LLC, LLP. I'm actually liable for that for negligence. In the same way, let's say there's actually a staircase and it has like the railings and whatnot. Let's say those rails are really loose. If they lean on those rails and they're really loose and then they end up getting injured as a result of me not fixing those rails, a limited liability company wouldn't protect me from that or my assets.
It pierces the veil.
Exactly. And then it's also an additional cost to actually have an LLC. So me, I said, I don't have an LLC. So I'm like, all right, where do we not want to be? We don't want to be foreclosed, bankrupt, homeless, all that stuff. I just went through my 5 stages of depression in about 10 minutes. I'm like, all right, time to boss up. So first of all, how much is this going to cost? How much do I need to put down? I notified the company, look, my insurance isn't going to cover it. How much of a down payment I need to put down? Because I cannot stop them. Because if I don't pay them, they could just pick their equipment up and then the house is still infested and all that stuff. So they actually worked with me. They understood it was a bad situation. Say, you know what? We're going to finish the job. We'll send you a bill. You don't have to put any money down. Okay, cool. Next step, where we are on the repairs, because somebody's living in this home. Like the lease agreement already been signed at this point. Like they've been living there since like April at this point. So I'm like, okay, what's the next step? And I'm speaking fast because this is how everything's running through our mind. Okay, we know we're going to have to pay for the demolition on the back end. Okay, and we can get that assessed with our financial situation. Like, okay, do we have contractors to immediately start the repairs? So as soon as they finish, will I have contractors in that home to start the repairs? I had 3-4 different contractors coming by, spoke to them, got quotes on everything, picked the contractor, how soon can you start? I select them because they could start the day after Christmas. Whereas, because once again, this happened on December 17th, right? So we fast forward a week, it's Christmas, and that was an awful situation. Well, I'm pretty sure that was the worst Christmas because like the home looked like a skeleton. Like I walked back in that home, I saw all them fans. I didn't even see fans out there. I just saw dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign. I gotta pay for all this, man. And so I was like, all right, we got the contract, we had their price. They gave the price like 10,000, whatever. All right, cool. Plus all materials, labor, whatever. Okay, cool. That's their price, perfect. So they're gonna be in there starting. So that's repairs, and we'll have to pay them all, or I don't have to pay them all 10,000 up front. I can just do like partial payment. Like, all right, they gotta do a deposit, they gotta do a progressive payment, they gotta do the final payment. So it's not all that cash. It wasn't $30 coming out of the bank account all at once that I obviously have that. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it wasn't like just push in the red. So timing came into effect. So like, let's see my cash flow or my cash inflows versus my cash outflows, and when is everything going to hit? So I'm like, all right. And then I started looking at my assets, like some of my little investments that are liquid assets, like index funds. I wasn't liquidating my 401k, so I was out the picture, like index funds and like cash in the bank and whatnot. And I'm saying, do I have the money to pay this in cash before I liquidate everything? And I'm like, oh, if I got rid of all the index funds and even the 401k, yeah, I'll be fine. I'm like, whoo, okay, that's all we need to know. Okay, now let's get to a reasonable idea. We don't want to liquidate the 401k. We don't want to liquidate the index funds. We're not trying to make it reach that far. So let's compare cash inflows to cash outflows. In addition, how can we use our credit cards and leverage our credit cards, which I call my banks immediately and say, I need you to up the limit on this credit card to X amount of dollars. Like, I need you just to up it as much as possible. Because what we're going to do what I was going to do is actually swipe a credit card. When that happens, I could wait, depending on when I swiped it. If I were to swipe it, because my billing cycle ends on the 22nd, if I swipe on the 23rd, I don't have to pay that until not the next month, 23rd, but the month after. So I really get 60 days to pay that without incurring any interest. And that's what I was afraid of. Absolutely. I was afraid of interest and late fees. Because that could get out of control. And so that's why I figured out, okay, between cash in the bank, all the savings, between my credit cards, I can actually leverage my credit cards to actually pay this money without going bankrupt and just cut all my additional spending as well. It's Christmas season. Oh, well, guess we ain't getting enough for Christmas. I guess not. Okay, perfect. Glad we got that covered. And so I was able to run all these numbers, and this is real-time information. Like I did this in the time span of about 36 hours or 48 hours. Like I made sure. And so when I had the full picture of everything I was going to owe, I'm like, all right, fine. We understand cash flows. Goes back to running those numbers that we keep talking about. Understanding cash flows, inflows, and outflows, and understanding where individuals are. And also, this is in the book, like having cash reserves, which is not just important in real estate, just important in life. From there, I was able to figure it out. Like, okay, and to this day, I can tell you, I pay for everything by using credit cards and cash in the bank, using the different timing associated with cash flows and my tax benefit. paid everything with zero interest incurred, which I was like, yes. So like we back at it, like we back grinding. So that's the happy ending on that story. Everything was able to get fixed in a timely manner. The home looks beautiful, looks gorgeous, looks better than before. And so some good came out of it, but that's what I'm telling individuals. And that was just the ultimate test of real estate, mathematics, and all my passions that I described at the very beginning coming to. Like, Zelda, can you think ahead? When you look at Grand Theft Auto, how do you get passive income? Look at my passion for mathematics. I sat there and I just had models on Excel spreadsheets galore. I was running different scenarios. What do they call sensitivity analysis, the what if analysis. I just kept running this. And then they had options like, well, you could technically, because it got billed on December 21st, I believe. They gave me 60 days, and they said 60 days if you haven't paid, not even that, more than that, because they said by March 22nd, like March 22nd, 2021. So literally less than a month ago, that was like my deadline. They said, we'll give you 90 days to pay it in full. If you don't pay it, then we'll send you to collection. But you can actually come in if it was due on March 22nd, March 21st, I could sign an agreement with another company they contract with and pay it back over the course of 6 months. So I'm like, you know what? Technically, I got 90 days. I got 9 months to pay this back if I play this right. And I'm like, is that an option I want to use? Maybe, maybe not. But that's everything.
Flexibility.
Yes.
And because you proactively engage in the process.
Yes.
And not waiting and avoiding and all that good stuff. You just took action, and one action led to another action, and another action led to the next action.
Yes.
So, Jerome, honestly, I've kept you well over time, my man. I think that was a great way to kind of encapsulate things in terms of your journey, connecting your gamification, literally, to everything today, and the transferability of skills in everything that you've done and the lessons that you've learned throughout. So as we wrap this up here, quick question for you. If you were to leave parting words for anyone who may be interested in engaging in this space, outside of maybe some things that we've touched on here, what advice would you give?
What advice would I give in regards to?
Like just to real estate investing and all that good stuff.
Real estate investing, one, understand him or herself, who they are as a person. Like, just understand that there are so many different avenues in real estate, and one avenue that might be working for me, i.e. real estate with regards to rental properties, that's working for me. But when it comes to that specific person, maybe they actually do like doing repairs versus working with individuals and dealing with different personality of tenants. So maybe they should get into flipping, or maybe they're just a phenomenal negotiator. In that case, don't flip homes, don't do rental properties. Also sit there and just be a middle person between the buyer and the seller. So it's a lot of different avenues in real estate. Or maybe they have insight that other individuals don't have because they work in construction and they notice, you know what? They're doing a lot of construction in Bankhead, Atlanta, or Vine City, Atlanta. Maybe I should just go ahead and buy a rental property in this community, knowing that 20, 30 years from now, this whole area is going to be unaffordable. Just for context, I live in Vine City, so on the west side of Atlanta, there's a lot of investing going on with real estate, and they're buying and actually building a lot of high price condominiums. Like, I think they're building some townhomes off Joseph Larry that start for like 335,000. And so that's going to drive the price of everything over here up. So individuals are coming in, and the belt lines over here. So individuals that have this type of insight, because they work in construction, they might say, you know what, one of those boarded up homes, one of board up right off of the belt line, perfect location. You should walk outside, and what are you doing? You running down the belt line, getting great exercise. And we're right by the HBCUs, the Atlanta University Center. And so individuals just understanding who they are as a person and then getting into real estate. Me, I love math. I love running numbers. And so I jumped into it, and then I was like passive income because I don't have a lot of free time or much free time as I want. So I'm like, okay, let me do rental property. But some of the individuals, if I was a better negotiator, I'll be just doing the middleman. Like, okay, I'm gonna negotiate between the buyer and seller, take my cut, and that's that. And if I really love doing repairs, I would just be doing flips. I'm like, okay, let me buy this home. Let me actually finish the construction of it. Let me sell it for a profit. Let me just keep doing that month in and month out. And so that's what really I tell them, like, make sure they know who they are, what they are passionate about,
self-awareness,
and get into real estate. Don't try to find yourself in this process. It's going to end like a disaster.
I got you. So Jerome, again, thank you for your time. You provided excellent wisdom and advice. I love how you ended this. There is more than one way to do real estate.
Yes.
Leverage your skill set, be self-aware, and operate in your strengths, which I think is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
For those of you all who have tuned in, We appreciate you for sticking with us. We hope that you got a lot of value out of this video. Please like, subscribe, share. I know Jerome doesn't have a side hustle where he consults, but he absolutely should, in terms of helping individuals run the numbers, understand the numbers so that they can win on the front end, so they can actually live in the fullness of their investment. So y'all, we appreciate you. Again, check me out on LinkedIn, not on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Instagram at Modem Solutions. And until next time, you have more power than you think. Own it. Bye, y'all. Appreciate you, Jerome.
No problem.